Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome back to all the members of the Portfolio Committee, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, the DG. If they are in the meeting, I am aware, as I had indicated earlier, members, that the department had indicated that they might have a session with the NCOP in the afternoon. I am not sure if that session is continuing or if they are in the meeting, but if they are welcome back to everyone. And good afternoon to the team from the Education, Labor and Relations Council. You are most welcome to our Portfolio Committee meeting. I had switched on my camera earlier and I was advised that my network is not stable, and it is not. I concur because my gadget, my laptop, keeps indicating on the screen that my network connection is unstable, and that is one of our issues here in the parliamentary village. However, I do hope that I'm audible now. So apologies for not putting on my camera. I am trying to ensure that I at least have adequate network connection. You are most welcome. We are really elated to have this session in this afternoon with the council. We have been looking forward to having engagements on the outcomes of a very important task that was undertaken by the ELRC in collaboration with DBE, PEDs, teacher unions, and of course, Treasury to some level or to some extent of personnel verification within the basic education sector. A very important exercise that you undertook. It's important for us because we see it as an instrumental move in ensuring that we help the department to provide quality education, to ensure accountability, to also, to a certain extent, ensure safety, and of course, to ensure that we've got an accurate school administration. This exercise for us will assist the entire sector to identify gaps in the human resource management systems, and of course, deal with such gaps as identified, understanding that the Department of Basic Education is a labor-intensive sector. This it's very important also for us, and we're looking forward. We're actually excited about the work you've done because it is going to deal with the allegations that have been thrown around about ghost teachers within the system. So we've already received your presentation, and of course, very, very important outcomes that come from this exercise that you've undertaken. So we are looking forward to engaging with the task that you've undertaken, and rooting out the issues that you might have discovered as you undertook this task. If there has been a detection of ghost teachers, because that means a fraud has transpired, but also that means a loss to public funds that could have been allocated for employment of more teachers. More so, we would have noticed as a country and as citizens in the country that there is some form of a movement as a country where we are having serious issues with undocumented non-South Africans, what others will term illegal foreign nationals or undocumented foreign nationals, that have been a bone of contention, that have been a serious worry by citizens. And of course, our schooling system is not immune from this problem. In the beginning of the year, when we were experiencing a placement and admission challenges in provinces, in areas that have pressures, parents were saying that some of the reasons why we're having these challenges might be because of the high number of undocumented non-South African learners that have been absorbed in the system. And this exercise really sheds light on the facts, on what are the real numbers. Is this allegation, is this assertion true? Can we say as a country that our challenges in the education system as they pertain to overcrowding in classrooms, admission challenges, placement of learners, are those challenges really as a result of the high numbers of enrollment of undocumented non-South African learners? And I think this exercise really assists the portfolio committee and South Africans at large and the sector at large to understand what are the facts, what is on the ground comprehensively. So we really appreciate the work, and I for one found this report and found your work to be really enlightening. It has empowered me to understand the real or the verified status of our basic education system. Of course, due to budget constraints as well, your work is going to shed light on issues of overcrowded classrooms and the teacher-learner ratio, if there is adherence to it, if in terms of the labor force that we have in the system, if that translates to a learner having a teacher in front of them daily. And so we're really looking forward to this presentation because it's very important for us as a portfolio committee. And I take it's important also for South Africans at large and all stakeholders within the basic education sector, because it also assists the department in terms of planning, in terms of budget allocation, in terms of identifying the gaps and the areas where there should be prioritization of funds in terms of human resource. So with that said, colleagues, it was just welcoming remarks to the council and to appreciate this exercise they've undertaken. And I think to a certain extent, this is the first meeting we're going to have with you on your report. And we are planning, or we are anticipating on having a second session with you on this report with the PEDs, because this the responsibility of recruitment of personnel and admissions and the learners in the school rests at the level of PEDs. So it will be important for PEDs to be here and respond to these findings that you've made in some areas. So we will have a second session. This is the first session where you are just briefing us on the outcomes and on the modalities, on the methodologies that you've utilized to conduct this very important exercise. I'm going to, without a waste of time, allow the council to, if the DPE is here, DPE can start and introduce the council so that they can take us through the presentation. I noticed as I read the presentation that all provinces participated in this exercise except the Western Cape, which is really unfortunate. And I would also want to hear from the department, DBE, as to why that is the case. As matter stands, we have a bad view, we'll have a comprehensive grasp of the status quo in terms of personnel and the number of learners in all the provinces, in the entire country except the Western Cape. And I want to understand what is the exception. Why is there some form of exception when it comes to the Western Cape? Maybe DPE can shed light, because we cannot expect the council to respond to that. So because it's really disappointing, especially because we've had many issues with the Western Cape, especially as they relate to admissions and placement of learners, and where they have consistently said that they have pressures in terms of the number of learners, new learners that they receive every year. But this exercise was going to assist us to actually understand verified data on the extent of this pressure that they're speaking about, Now we don't have that. We can't have that. And for me, it was really, really alarming that when I read the presentation that the province did not participate. And as a result, as you welcome us, as DPE gives an overview, please also comment on that before the council gives us a presentation. DPE, I'm going to now hand over to you to present the delegation of the council and the delegation that is going to lead us into the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, the leadership of ELRC and the leadership of SACE. We are with the DG here in the meeting. Let me just introduce the DG, then the DG will introduce the team. But I can see the chairperson of ELRC is here. But let me give that to DG. DG?
Good afternoon, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Indeed, Honorable Deputy Minister,
DG, you have been cut. I can see you are speaking, but you are no longer audible this side.
DG, we've lost you.
ELRC,
DG,
the
your
chair
network was
of
a bit
the
unstable.
ELRC, Advocate Bono, is indeed
DG, your network is unstable. Can you try and move and try some an area where we'll be able to hear you? Because we've lost you.
Chair, the two entities are here. Like I said, that I see Mr. Chris Grobler, who's the chairperson of the ELRC. I'm not. I see Dr. Foka, of course, but I.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
No.
You can't hear me.
Yeah, now it's better.
I've moved to try. You can't hear me up to now.
Now
We
hear
can
you,
hear you
DG.
now, DG.
Yo, the network in the village is the real challenge. No, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Chair, Honorable
No, DG, we're not winning. We are not winning, DG. We are not winning at all. So we still are struggling to hear you. Rather than let's allow.
have the chair of the ELRC, Advocate Bono, the General Secretary of the ELRC, Dr. Foka. The General Secretary can proceed and then presentation.
Okay, yes, the ELRC will proceed, DM. I had wanted the department to respond on, because you can't expect the council to respond on why one PED
My
did not
network is full
participate
on
in
my
the
side.
in the thing.
I don't know why you can't hear me. It's full brim, my network. I don't know.
We can hear you now, DG.
It's full brim, the network, and I don't know why you can't hear me. Well, let me say the chair and the secretary, the general secretary will lead the presentation. Well, the reason why the Western Cape is not participating, on the eve of starting with the process, we received a letter from the head of the department saying that the MEC has requested that Western Cape should not participate in the process until certain things which were at any rate attended to, raised by the minister in a meeting with the ELRC. Duly attended.
Okay, I think we should allow the council to present. DG Western
they have
Strategy.
reservations of participation
Chairperson?
until those things. To share the letter of.
Honorable Ngobeni.
Chair, thank you. Just for the sake of completeness, may we request that, because what the DG was about to say, and for us to hear, is quite important. Can those who are aware of what it is that he was about to say with regards to the non-attendance of the Western Cape, can someone please deal with that? And then let us write to the DG in a WhatsApp through the office of Mr. Brown to say that we are going to mute him at this time. Sorry, I'm not sure who's interfering now. So let's request that that gets written to the DG, and then we mute him so that he understands that that's what we are doing, and then the person who's responsible, who can speak to us about what he was about to articulate, can do that so that we have the fullness of his commentary, because I don't think we can just move into the presentation. He was about to give us reasoning. We think that that's very important, because I think members will want to engage on that, through this this particular engagement. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngobeni. I think that assists Mr. Brown. Let's ask the DG to communicate that response with the delegation or the team that is here. We'll still take that response, even if it's after the presentation. I had thought that because the DBE was going to start, it would be important for them to give that explanation before. But let's do that so that we don't waste time, and now allow the chairperson of the council, Advocate Bono, to lead the team in the presentation. We will then take that response, even if it's immediately after the presentation, before we go into questions. Chairperson, Advocate Bono, you were handing over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable Deputy Minister, and Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. As introduced, I'm Luvuyo Bono, I'm the Chairperson of the ELRC. Chair, I'm going to hand over to the General Secretary, who's the Accounting Officer, to lead the presentation together with the service provider who was appointed by the ELRC to assist us with this task. Thank you, Chair. Can I hand over to the General Secretary?
Greetings, Chair, Honorable Chair, and the DM, and as well as the members of the committee. I'm not sure, Chair, if you're giving me a go-ahead to take over the platform.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair, we appreciate the opportunity to present the work that has been done by the ELRC on behalf of the teacher unions as well as the departments of education, 9 provincial departments when we commenced, as led by the DBE National. I think as a way of just giving a background so that in the course of presenting, we also manage the expectations, taking cue from the submissions that have been made by the Chair. And we appreciate the commendations, Honorable Chair. It's just a matter of reminding the committee that we are a bargaining council, and if by any chance the employer decides to take the action against the employees who fall under the jurisdiction of the council, we would be required to preside over those disputes. Why am I starting off with this part, Chair, as a way of disclaimer? As I said, I'm trying to manage the expectations such that if we have flagged the records and that then requires further probing in the form of investigation by the respective employer, should it be found that there's misconduct committed, those processes might end up being on the agenda of the council through our dispute resolution. But if there's any allegations around fraud, obviously there you are talking about criminal conduct. The relevant law enforcement authorities will play their role. The council will have no role to play in that regard. Chair, as a reminder, without taking too much of the time, because we want to save the time for the service provider, we started off by being involved in this process because we're empowered in terms of NEPA to monitor the consultations on the creation and the distribution of posts for educators. And in the process of doing that, the parties to the ELRC had flagged a number of concerns pertaining to the unreliable data that is used to determine the number of posts allocated to school, informed by the number of learners. Then the request initially was that we should verify the data that is in existence in terms of the learner numbers, the schools that are there, as well as the teachers that are allocated to schools. Whilst we were in the process of that, the DPSA issued a circular directing all government departments to verify the personnel that is within the employment of the state. Then another decision was taken that we expand the terms of reference to the service provider such that the process also responds to the verification that was required by the Department of Public Service and Administration. You would notice from the presentation by Chris that is going to reflect on the methodology that was used to cater for both tasks because we were dealing with two. And as such, Chairperson, because we had addressed one gathering as part of sharing the report, and we were shocked when we were told in no uncertain terms that the work that has been done by the council is nothing close to what was the instruction from DPSA. But that is a debate for another forum, not necessarily for this one. As I'm reflecting on that, Chair, we also wish to advise the members of the committee that we had shared the report with both the DG DPSA, that is Public Service and Administration, as well as the DG National Treasury. Because as you had reflected, Chairperson, we had collaborated with National Treasury in this work because ours was to ensure that after the physical verification wherein all personnel would have presented themselves with their original IDs, photographs taken, then we ran that information through the National Treasury via the PESAL system, and both Director Generals were impressed with the work that had been done in the education sector. Hence, we were taken aback when we were told that the work that has been done is not responding to the work that the DPSA had commissioned, contrary to what the DPSA had expressed in those meetings. Chair, having said that, we also wish to advise the committee in advance that there is no reference in the report to ghost workers because to make such a finding, you must have conducted the investigation within the confines of the law because you'll be alleging, as you had rightfully put, that there's criminal act that has been committed. However, what is flagged in the report are numbers or data sets that require further investigation within the confines of the law, such that the employer, where there are allegations of misconduct by the officials, they take the appropriate action and refer cases where they suspect that there's criminal conduct to the relevant law enforcement officials. Chair, with those remarks, please allow me to pause and hand over to Ms. Chris Robler, who is the appointed service provider that had undertaken this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, GS. Good afternoon, Honourable Chair, Honourable Deputy Minister, and Honourable Members. I just want to confirm if you can see the presentation that I'm currently sharing.
Thank you very much. I think we can all see it. I can also see it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Right, so I'm going to take us through an executive summary of the report, the consolidated report that we constructed, union between our data set and the National Treasury data set. Of course, this is an executive summary. So even though it is quite comprehensive, it's not an entire reflection of all the data that was gathered during the project. So I think first off, I just want to highlight a few of the highlights and the call out cards there. So during the process, the ISDCP project, 438,000 employees were headcounted and verified. We also conducted a thorough audit of 21,174 schools. And then as part of the project, there was quite a big emphasis on learner headcounts and the sub-distribution of learner numbers into undocumented learners. So undocumented learners was furthermore divided into South African undocumented learners and foreign national undocumented learners, but we'll look into detail on those numbers a little bit later on. So the ISDCP project is a strategic initiative that was identified by the DG of Department of Basic Education and the ELRC, as the GS has given that background. And our scope of work included, and the deliverable was based on 8 provincial heads of department, and then in collaboration, again, with the SGB and the teaching unions. So as the GS explained earlier, initially the project was established and it was almost a up project based on what was done in the Eastern Cape Department of Education to ensure that the data on EMIS.
Yeah, I could hear that. Mr. Krop, your network is breaking a bit. I thought it was on my side because my network is a bit of a problem. But you are breaking a bit. Just try to have a stable area so that we can hear you.
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to switch to another network. We have experienced some flooding in East, so I think our networks are a bit undermined, but I'm going to switch to another network quickly. Stand by. Mr. Brown, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So as I was busy saying, and I'm just going to repeat that part, the original project was based on a very similar methodology and rationale as what was done for the Eastern Cape Department of Education, specific to PPM processes, as the GS has explained. But then we pivoted to include the requirements from the DPSA as specified in a circular in 2025. So at that point, the DG then requested that we also include office-based staff, which of course includes your branch, your individuals from your head offices and your districts. And we included that as our scope of work. If we look at our project timeline, the project officially kicked off on the 7th of October in 2025 with phase 1. And that was specific to the school-based verification, where there was on-site verification of educators, non-teaching staff, and of course then your learner numbers and your school infrastructure across the 21,000 plus schools. We also then, in that period, or preceding the 7th of October, we successfully trained close to 25,000 attendees using Microsoft Teams, and again in collaboration with DBE and the provincial departments of education. And a very important note to just carry in the back of our minds as I go through the presentation is that all the school level data, which includes the physical headcount and physical verification, was co-signed in one sitting by principals, STAR2 reps, ATU, CTU reps, and the HGB representatives. Concurrent to phase 1, and at the request of the DG, we then commenced with phase 2A, which was the office-based STAR verification. So there, it was also a very involved process where your HODs were involved, your branch heads and your district managers were responsible to verify the physical headcounts and identities of individuals that were physically counted and verified at your district offices and of course at head office. And then between the 19th and 28th of December, we gave schools an opportunity, as what it was required by the information regulator and the POPIA consultants that we consulted with on numerous occasions last year before we started the project. We had to give schools the opportunity to resubmit data that was flagged. So that happened between the 19th of November, or from the 19th of November, where the schools that were flagged and identities that were flagged were given an opportunity to resubmit ID documents and resubmit an ID photo, for example. Between the 2nd and 11th of December, our circuit managers were also involved nationally, where the circuit managers were then given the opportunity as an additional step to verify the data submitted by schools against the official records, including EMIS and PASEL. And that was quite an interesting process because already there we saw that a lot of official records were to some extent outdated and the information could then start to be rectified. Then on the 4th of December, we reached quite a big milestone where we readied the office staff data set and submitted to National Treasury. As the General Secretary has explained, throughout this process, we were in quite close communication with National Treasury, and we then submitted the data set as it was physically headcounted and verified using our system, of course, to create an audit trail and to serve as the document repository. We shared that with National Treasury to put that information through their Vulindlela system, which is basically their PASEL national system, to then see which records are also flagged on that side versus what was headcounted and verified on our side. And it becomes quite interesting, as you'll see as we go further down the presentation. On the 18th of December, we also handed over the largest data set, of course, which includes the educators and non-teaching staff data set. As part of that includes your school principals or your school managers. And again, that data set was handed over to National Treasury for exactly the same process, where they then would compare what is on the National Treasury PASEL system against what was verified and headcounted at a school and a district office and of course a head office level. On the 7th of January, we released the initial data sets to the provincial departments. These initial data sets were all the reports and all the raw data sets as it was constructed during the course of the project. And of course, already here, we had a number of flags or number of exceptions that the provincial education departments could then start their investigations with, or alternatively correct their official records. What we saw during that phase was very heartening, where many of the provincial departments took the data, they assembled an investigation team and an audit team, and they started clearing those flags. And we already saw quite a number of reports coming through from the provincial departments on their initial findings using this initial data set. On the 17th of February, National Treasury provided us with the data set, the consolidated data set. So that consolidated data set represents the data or the union of the data between the data that we gathered during the project and of course what is at the accessibility from National Treasury. And then from there, we then entered into a comprehensive data analysis where we analyzed all the data between our data set and the National Treasury data set across 9 dimensions, where we looked for very specific exceptions that exist between the official provincial records, and National Treasury. The very important thing I want to emphasize this afternoon is the methodology and compliance around the system that was used to facilitate the physical verification of employees. So the ISDCP headcount and verification of educators, non-teaching staff, and office-based staff was a physical, in-person process. Individuals were physically present, identity documents were physically inspected, and of course, an image or a file was uploaded to prove that. Signatures were captured from people in the room. The ISDCP platform was a tool used during the physical event. It did not replace physical verification. It enforced integrity controls around it and produced an immutable digital record of what happened. And that is a key thing to keep in mind. So throughout every phase of the project, as I explained it earlier, every single phase is represented as its own immutable audit trail and data set. So if ever there has to be an investigation, even on a granular level, we would be able to hand over that database and that data audit trail for that specific investigation. Physical headcount and verification at this scale is historically a paper-based exercise. Officials travel to points of collection, forms are completed by hand, signatures are captured on paper, returns arrive weeks later, incomplete, inconsistent, and impossible to audit at source. There's no enforcement of a single sitting verification, no immutable record of who signed what and when, no real-time visibility into progress or exceptions, and no mechanism to hold a school submission against an official record without a second manual cross-check. The ISDCP keeps the physical verification process intact. People must still be in the room, identity documents must still be physically inspected and captured, but replaces the paper-based wrapper around it end to end. It is purpose-built digital platform that enforces integrity controls at the point of physical capture and verification. Before data ever leaves the school or office, it carries each record through automated review, principal level correction, circuit manager audit, personnel preparation, and joint ELRC National Treasury analysis with a single tamper-evident audit trail from start to finish. So if we look at the platform features, and I'm going to run through this very, very briefly, Chair. It had an intuitive user interface. Again, that was honed by years and years of experience working and doing projects for the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape. So we ensured that it's as simple and as intuitive to use. We used localized machine learning extraction and verification technologies that was homegrown and built in South Africa and also hosted on Microsoft Azure in Johannesburg North. We have full traceability of all verification actions. The platform also have offline capability, of course, very much focused on our rural schools, which struggled with internet connection. So we ensure that no one is disadvantaged during this process. And testament to that was that our rural schools, and DG can attest to that, outperformed the schools that actually had reliable internet connection in terms of their submission rates. As I said earlier, Azure is South African hosted, so none of the data was sent overseas for verification or extraction. And finally, we were able to train plus minus 25,000 attendees via Microsoft Teams. And we also used a new methodology to create AI-assisted training material that was hosted on a secure invite-only link on YouTube. And that was also distributed to all the users. And we have hundreds and thousands of hits on those videos, testament to how many times the users actually went to rewatch these instructional videos. If we look at the controls and integrity, I'm going to go through that cascading list very briefly. So we enforced a single sitting enforcement, physical headcount as a single event. All educators, non-teaching staff, and office-based staff, by the way, had to be physically present and headcounted and identity verified in one sitting. So the system did not allow, if you had 20 educators, for instance, on your system, you could not verify and headcount 10 and only come back tomorrow to do the other 10. As soon as you ended your sitting or you moved your location, we would flag those records and we would reject that records, leading to many frustrations from principals and some shouting matches on the phone, certainly. But ultimately that ensured that a single sitting was enforced from a systems level. 4 stakeholder co-signature requirements, so that was a prerequisite before we would accept any data. The principal, SGB, SARTU, and CTU-AT representatives all had to be physically present in the room and sign on the platform during the same sitting. So again, not even signatures were allowed to be taken in different sittings. A submission could not be completed without all 4 signatures captured in person in session. This ensured that every school's numbers and identities carried consensus endorsement from management, governance, and both majority workplace organizations, removing any single party's ability to shape the return unilaterally. If we look at our branch head and district director sign-off, this was specific to office-based staff. So office-based staff headcounts were physically headcounted and identity verified at their offices, and the resulting captures were reviewed, flagged, and signed off by branch heads and district directors. So this furthermore extends the physical verification with multi-party endorsement principle from the school steer. Number 4, tamper-evident audit trail. Every action on the platform, record creation, edits, flag raises, corrections, sign-offs, etc., is logged with timestamp, actor identity, and device context. The audit trail is immutable and attaches to each record for its full life cycle. Where data is later corrected, the original value and the corrections are both retained with identity of the correcting party. Offline first with verified sync. Spoke about that earlier. That was quite important for the schools that struggled with connectivity. Machine-assisted verification. So our first round of verification was done entirely objectively using the machine learning algorithms and homegrown technology to identify any discrepancies between the appearance of a person on the photo versus the ID. We also did some ID number extraction to look for any errors and anything that might raise exception. And we also flagged those. And of course, that was then sent back for human review. And that was a pivotal requirement by the information regulator, was that the system isn't 100% fully autonomous when it comes to flagging exceptions. Yes, we could flag those exceptions, but ultimately we must give the opportunity for those exceptions to be corrected by both the office-based staff, principals, which would be your branch heads and your district directors, but also your school principals at a school level. We also provided DBE with a real-time analytics and central file repository platform where the DBE could track the progress of submissions and exception rates in real time. And based on this platform we made available, the DG had us in quite a few 5 a.m. meetings during the submission process. And then finally, POPIA-aligned access control. So phases 2B and phase 3 databases are physically separated, and I touched on that earlier. Access to consolidated reporting is gated behind authorization letters from provincial HODs and, of course, DBE, and ultimately the person I report to is the General Secretary, so including the General Secretary's approval on any sharing of information. Human review requirements for flag records are codified into the workflow. Azure South Africa Region Hosting maintains data sovereignty as required by South African legislation. And then we also have a full POPIA and information regulator alignment section. So the 6 phases in the ISDCP process is firstly the physical headcount and verification, automated review of headcount and identities, principal correction venue, and I use principal there because it both speaks to your branch heads and your district directors, and of course your school principals, your circuit manager audit, the self-preparation, and then collaborative analysis, which speaks to our work in collaboration with National Treasury. And as the GS has said earlier, we presented the initial reports to the DPSA and National Treasury's Director Generals in February of this year, and both were exceptionally impressed with the level of detail in exactly how this process was facilitated and ultimately collaboratively implemented. So I have a very simple table here that compares a manual versus a paper-based process, or our platform against a paper-based process. We have touched on this, so I'm not going to repeat everything again. If there are questions surrounding the process, we can circle back to this table later, as this gives a very distinct and detailed analysis of the differences between running with a paper-based system as opposed to a digital system that captures the information during physical verification. I'll move very swiftly to our stakeholder participation, and I want to share this briefly just to reinforce the scale and scope of the review process. So if we look at how many individuals physically audited and physically attested to the veracity and accuracy of the data, includes 20,406 unique SARTU representatives across the 8 provinces, 17,310 unique CTU, ATU representatives, 21,000 unique SGB representatives, 897 circuit managers. So our total stakeholders, unique stakeholders, except for the school principals, district directors, and branch heads, included nearly 60,000 stakeholders who co-signed to every single audit that was submitted using the system. We have a distribution of our representative from the various organizations, a table here. I won't go through every single item or every single table, but it's some nice data visualizations just to give you an indication of the distribution of reps. If we go to our school infrastructure and learner and school management audit, we verified 21,174 schools, 11.7 million learners were headcounted. We counted 317,000 classrooms, and the learner to classroom ratio for the 8 provinces is 36.9. If we look at our schools and learners by province, we can see the distribution on this graph here, on our distribution graph, the undocumented learner overview, and then our learner classroom ratio by province. And we can see, for instance, KwaZulu-Natal has an LCR of 43.2, followed by Limpopo 38.5, and so forth. We look at our school infrastructure and facilities. So 1 in 3 schools are without municipal water or electricity. So that amounts to plus minus 7,000 schools lack either municipal water or electricity connections. The infrastructure for teaching, so nearly 3 in 4 schools are without dedicated science or computer labs, which is quite a big STEM gap in terms of infrastructure and services. And then the learner to classroom ratio varies from between 28.7 to the uppermost threshold of 43.2. Again, we can look at our facilities availability across the 8 provinces. Municipal water, only 66.6 schools. Electricity, the same. Science labs, only 27.7 schools have access to a science and computer lab. So here we have libraries. Secure fencing, only 74.3 schools have secure fencing, and we saw a direct correlation between this and increased crime rates at the schools who do not have secure fencing, and then dedicated sporting facilities that are in direct control of the school, only 45.2. If we head over to our undocumented learners, so in total we head counted and verified by virtue of the signatories to the accuracy of this data, 610,000 undocumented learners. Of the 610,000 undocumented learners, 362,571 are South African nationals, 247,755 are foreign nationals, and Gauteng tops out with the most or the highest percentage of undocumented learners at 9.4. So if we look at the 610,000 children without proper documentation, it's a domestic documentation crisis. An estimate of 362,000 South African children are enrolled in schools without proper identity documentation, pointing to systemic failures in birth registrations and ID issuance processes managed by the Department of Home Affairs. So if we look at our undocumented learner rates by province, we can look at our total learner numbers for Eastern Cape, for example. You can see 57,912 undocumented, and that is then split between South African nationals and foreign nationals. And here we can see the large numbers for Gauteng, sitting at 9.4%, where Gauteng does have more foreign national undocumented learners as what they do South African nationals. If we look very briefly at our crime and social factors, our crime and safety, so 2,884 schools report high crime rates. And then we've got about 4,000 schools who report average crime rates. As I said earlier, there's direct correlation to the circuits and districts where schools have less secure fencing, and that seems to almost have equivalency to the increases in crime rates. And then if we move to our school flags, so during the ISDCP process, one of the key things we have to do is to ensure that the EMIS data that we receive is accurate. So that EMIS data in specific speaks to the EMIS number of the school name, the school type, and then also is the school, and when I say type, specifically referred to a primary or a high school. So during that process, we found 870 schools that had an incorrect classification on EMIS. In Northwest, we had to bulk update 687 schools, and there were 183 other individual flags, which were then consolidated and sent to DBE with a request for investigation. So if we specifically look at Northwest, Department of Education submitted a bulk change request affecting 687 schools, of which 580 were reclassified from secondary to primary. And that is quite a big challenge in terms of just governance and then also equitable distribution of resources. Specifically, if we consider that a primary school versus a secondary school, there are weighting differences between the number of educators and learners and resources between these two types of schools. We also then suggested to DBE that there's a compliance audit conducted on 23 individually flagged schools. Those flags included that some of the data submissions made, we detected on our GIS module that the submissions were made from houses, were made in areas quite far from where the school is actually plotted on Google Maps. And the DG can expand further on those findings, but that was quite a successful compliance audit and investigation led by the DBE. And the final little slide there speaks to exactly that. If we look at our educators, non-teaching staff, and school managers meaning principals or vice principals, our headcount, we headcounted 407,000 plus minus educators, non-teaching staff, and school principals or vice principals. We had 384,762 per cell matched. We had a quality score of 91.1% as rated between the overlap and union between ourselves and National Treasury. And we have a total of 146,000 flag records. 96% of educators confirmed present. So it's a very good thing. So those educators are exactly where we expect them to be in the classroom. But then we have 6,110 educators not delivering instruction. So out of that 6,110 educators were confirmed as not delivering instructions. 5,685 were on extended sick leave, 171 were suspended, and 254 educators were absent without leave. So these posts, of course, represent funded posts with zero classroom input. We then also furthermore detected 7,018 educators that transferred. And the interesting thing here was that we saw educators that, for example, would transfer from the Eastern Cape to Limpopo, but the educator would appear on the Eastern Cape dataset and the Limpopo dataset. And the system is designed that way so that we can get that exception and that flag. And of course, that was also handed over to the provincial departments to ensure that they clean up the official records, to ensure that the official record is accurate as to where that educator is exactly. These transfers require payroll reconciliation to confirm that vacated posts have been filled and that no duplicate salary payments exist. If we look at our provincial workplace or workforce summary, we can see, for example, again, starting alphabetically with the Eastern Cape, 4,962 schools, plus minus 49,000 educators, 8,600 non-teaching staff, with a total workforce of plus minus 57,000, excluding school managers, which are your principals and vice principals. Here we can see our average per school, so our average workforce per school, as well as how many records per province was flagged. And here we can clearly see the top three included Eastern Cape, Free State, and Gauteng, with KwaZulu-Natal having the lowest flag rate out of all the provinces. If we look at our flag record analysis from our process, the ISDCP process, and the Vulindlela union process, we have 131,790 that was flagged in union. Out of that, 21,614 were flagged only on our side. And the union flag, meaning records flagged on both our system and National Treasury system, included 146,000 flags. So the total personnel flagged ultimately included 22,409. So we can see a repeat of the high flag provinces, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and Free State. And here we can see the Vulindlela flag rate per province, as well as the ISDCP flag rate per province. So Vulindlela, again, is National Treasury, and ISDCP was our project process last year. If we look at our top flag categories, was the ID and passport quality was poor. We also had other flags that the circuit managers were able to select, and that normally would read to as requiring further investigation. We detected multiple employee information that was incorrect. That could include that the employee was expected to be at school A, but was found to be at school B, or province A and province B. And again, just a flag rate per province. If we look at our de facto anomalies and exceptions, so we have 22,837 individuals that there's no Purcell match for on the National Treasury dataset. We have 324 individuals that are both registered on Treasury at DBE and another state department, but was also headcounted in our process. So 324 individuals, in other words, that were physically headcounted, physically verified during the ELRC-led project, but then on National Treasury's Purcell database, it clearly shows that that individual is also employed by another state department. We have 2,500 resignations. Many of these resignations predate our project, so that could also then indicate that the Purcell database is not up to date. And then we also detected 1,908 non-South African citizens, and this isn't meant to be alarmist because many of these non-South African citizens could have been naturalized already. Our suggestion was to just ensure that the official documentation is representative of what the facts are. And then we also detected plus minus 37,000 non-standard appointments, which includes your EPWP and your BEI employments. In the Eastern Cape specifically, that was a large degree of records that we flagged just for further review. Specific to the Eastern Cape, we also saw that there was quite a significant cohort of EPWP staff members that did not have any end date specified in Purcell for their contract termination. And of course, the risk there is that the contract ends, but the individual still gets paid after the contract end date. Here we can see the no match Purcell by province. And again, this is driven by National Treasury's data. We can see KwaZulu-Natal with the largest number, followed by the Eastern Cape, and then in third place, Limpopo. Non-South African citizens, so the top nationalities include Zimbabwe with 1,192, India 209, Ghana 120, Lesotho 88, Nigeria 60, Swaziland 38, Cameroon 25, and Uganda 20. And then our non-standard appointments by province is KwaZulu-Natal and then the Eastern Cape. We also detected duplicate and irregular records, but that has also then been flagged for further review. The interesting one for us was specifically our irregular duplicates, where we saw 573 unique identities, where 202 were the same person from the same school. So that is an obvious clerical mistake that was made. The second one was same person, different school. So here that is very much explicable, and we did look at the data line running there. That happened primarily due to transfers. But then we had 44 different person, different school, where the same ID and the same ID number and name and surname was used, but it's two different people at two different schools. And then different person, same school, again, showing towards a clerical mistake. We also did a passport and other ID analysis where we identified where the errors were exactly. So 6,642 were erroneous South African IDs, 277 foreign national passports. We had 297 staff members use their date of birth instead of an ID number when they submitted their IDs. And then the other 186 were text entries instead of their ID numbers. If we look very briefly at our school managers or our school principals, we had 21,174 head counted. We had 92.5 match quality, meaning between the physical verification and National Treasury's verification, there was a 92.5 match rate. There are 8,413 flagged. And then there are 631 duplicate parcel numbers submitted. That makes sense given that there are a very large amount of acting principals throughout the 8 provinces. So much of this is explainable by the fact that an individual is appointed both as an educator, but they were also headcounted as the school principal or the school vice principal. So again, just to highlight the importance of just considering how many acting principals are currently at schools in the 8 provinces. If we look at our office-based staff, we headcounted 30,027 staff. There's 14,944 on exception registers. Again, most of those are clerical mistakes and most of those are almost non-issues. If we look at our distribution between contract and permanent, so 22,836 individuals are permanently employed by DBE, 3,912 on contract, and then we have 2,390 interns employed in office-based positions. 851 of the 30,027 has been flagged for further review. And we can see the appointment composition varies significantly. So if we look at our appointment types, in the Eastern Cape has the highest contract rate of 32.8 compared to the national average of only 13%, while Free State has the lowest at just 3.4%. The other category of 889 includes probationary, temporary, acting, learnership, part-time displaced, and union appointments. We also did a cross-cutting analysis of foreign nationals for the office-based staff. Again, we can see 93 foreign nationals from 14 countries. 47 were invisible during our project because the 47 individuals did have South African ID numbers. So 28 both agree foreign. So those 47 we detected when we ran our analysis against National Treasury's data set. And then very briefly, if we look at our cross-cutting findings, it's an unprecedented verification achievement to physically headcount, physically verify 483 or 438,000 employees across 21,000 schools with learner records for 11.7 million children. The workforce learner alignment gap, infrastructure deficits, and staffing anomalies compound to create unequal learning environments. Provinces with the highest learner classroom ratios also tend to show infrastructure deficits in basic services, creating a compounding effect on educational outcomes. And as part of this alignment gap is definitively internet connectivity and IT skills specific to the management of the school. So we also, again, I want to reiterate the 610,322 undocumented learners, which should be quite a big focus. And the GS of ELRC will also attest that the DPSA and National Treasury's DG and DBE DG shares that there's a desperate need for intervention to ensure that undocumented learners are given documents. Infrastructure staffing correlation, provinces with the highest learner to classroom ratio also show infrastructure deficits in basic services specific to water and electricity and teaching facilities. This correlation suggests a compounding resource allocation challenge. And then the cross data set linkage completed. So ISTCP, this project led by the ELRC, delivered the first verified defensible link between DBE school level workforce data and National Treasury records, pairing school level verification and National Treasury compensation data at record level. Our strategic recommendations, Chair, include workforce reconciliation. So specifically the 6,110 genuinely non-present educators, which include the extended sick leave, suspended and absent without leave, has to be reconciled. Flag personnel analysis, which the province has already started with based on the preliminary data sets that we gave in January 2026. But again, with the added data set that DBE has access to now, that includes the consolidated data analysis across 9 dimensions based on our data collection and verification and National Treasury system. It gives DBE and the provincial departments a very detailed view in exactly where the records needs to be unflagged or cleared, and furthermore, where official records require urgent intervention in terms of cleaning up those records or enhancing the existing control systems, because that was perhaps the biggest finding for us, was that the control systems at a provincial level are archaic and does not cater for the dynamicism of the school sector in the respective provinces. So we already spoke about the undocumented learner response, the Eastern Cape EPWP and BEI verification. So we touched on that earlier, where what was interesting there was the concentration was in only 2 of the 12 districts and 97 records with no termination date. That has already been escalated to the HOD, and I do know that between herself and subordinates are busy investigating, clearing that up. We must also continue to monitor school classification integrity, which is exceptionally important when it comes to PPN, infrastructure delivery and accountability, where we spoke about the schools that don't have access to municipal water or electricity, and also schools who don't have access to dedicated science and computer labs. And that, Chair, brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grobler. GS, any closing remarks? Chair, any closing remarks before I take comments and questions from members? Or you are fine?
No, thank you, Chair. I think from my side, what the report is showing is actually, it should be a clarion call for government departments to collaborate, especially on issues of data management. Because clearly, if there's clear collaboration between your home affairs, your national treasury, as well as the other government departments, in particular DBE, at the point of recruitment, because once that is managed proper, then there wouldn't be a problem going forward. Because it's a question of just maintaining it such that where there are terminations, it comes seamlessly. So that's what we want to reflect on, Chair. And again, the concern mainly is on South African nationals who do not have the proper documentation, because for us, that contributes to the challenges that are confronted by these kids, because we know and appreciate the level of poverty, and them not being able to access social grant is a serious cause for concern. And I think there is a study where it was shown that there's correlation between a high dropout and access to the social assistance, that is your social grants. That is an area that the DG is very passionate about, and we have also pleaded with the provincial departments that they need not to wait for any policy change, but there must be intervention, because we have been able to identify which schools these learners are in, as well as the districts. So it's a question of collaborating with Home Affairs and then expeditiously assisting these learners, especially South African nationals, because clearly there's no issue about checking whether the parents are in the country legally or not, because by virtue of them being South Africans, they should be able to access all the benefits that South Africans have that are eligible to get. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chairperson.
Honorable Chair, I think most has been covered. Perhaps just two issues in closing. One, the issue that that we started with, which the DG got cut off in relation to the Western Cape. That I think the General Secretary adequately covered that after not participating, the Western Cape alleged that the verification that was done by the ELRC in fact was not in accordance with what is required by the DBSA, which we find very odd, because the DG of the DBSA was in fact quite excited when what we are doing was demonstrated to him, and in fact found that it went far beyond what they were doing as the DBSA. That's the first one. The second one, and I think in summary of what the General Secretary has just said, there are clear cracks in the system, Honorable Chair. Mr. Grobler has mentioned issues of IDs being used twice or thrice. That translates into that person possibly, until the investigation is done, possibly receiving 2 or 3 salaries. Also, you would find the ID of Luvuyo Bono in Limpopo, and again on Pesal, and the same Luvuyo Bono in the Eastern Cape, which means that that person is being paid twice. Also, other aspects that were picked up is schools that are still receiving funding, but those schools have been closed. So that's just a sample, Chair, but I think in a nutshell, I just wanted to say the cracks are quite evident. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate. DG, are you back now? Can you speak now?
Full steam. I'm back full steam.
We don't want you back full steam.
Full steam with 3 gadgets now.
Okay.
I don't want to get into trouble with Honorable Goveni, you know. Hey.
Okay.
Honorable Mkiza is on my case now. I don't want to lose many people. I wanted to read you the letter, Chair, if you don't mind, of the Western Cape. Is it fine?
We do mind, DG. I don't think we want to hear what the Western Cape has to say.
Okay, let me not read
We want to
the
hear
letter.
what they said to you and how you engaged with them, because quite frankly, where I'm seated, I'm really okay. I don't want to mention the word I am, but I think tell us your engagements with the Western Cape, because this data that we're having, which is very important. I mean, it is, when I read this thing, I was like, wow. But now we have a half story because they are not part. So tell us about your engagements with the PED and why they did not participate.
Okay, what they are mentioning is that they said we must give them time to get legal opinion. The issue that they were raising was that they are not willing to release the data of their employees and their learners. And they are concerned about liabilities that are associated with the data, the POPIA issues, and so on. But those things, the ELRC had addressed in a meeting with the minister, but there was an undertaking that they'll take the issue up with the information regulator, which happened. But the Western Cape never came back ever since they said they are going to get legal opinion. But I'm pleading with you, Chair, to give you a copy of the letter, which I think you can share with honorable members. So the bottom line is that they were not comfortable in releasing their data to the ELRC, whether it be employees or learners, and they wanted to get legal opinion. They never came back ever since. And in every step of the journey, we were involving them. Even, the update on the work that is being done here, they were involved. They know even the last CEM received this report that you have received here. So they are aware that we have concluded the process. And the main issue is that the HOD said he was directed by the MEC not to participate for reasons that I've given. And then he said he's been directed to get legal opinion.
Okay.
So that's where we are with the Western Cape. I'm sorry that it doesn't spell good news.
Yeah, there is some sort of exceptionalism. Okay, let's allow members to engage. Maybe before members come and engage, the chairperson, I just wanted to check if the organized labor has received the report and you have preliminary reaction of the organized labor, because I understand as the GS was presenting in her opening remarks, indicating that actually it was organized labor that called for this exercise, motivated for this exercise because of their concern on the post provisioning process. Have they been officially involved? I mean, have they received officially the report, and have you sourced their preliminary reaction? I think as we ask questions, maybe I will allow you to respond when you take responses at the end of the meeting, because I think that is, for me, it's very important. It'll be a very important insight on what organized labor is saying on these findings of this report. Honorable members, and of course, maybe before honorable members, I fully agree with GS. GS, I fully agree on the South African undocumented learners. I think we must take a decision as a portfolio committee to write officially to the Department of Home Affairs to provide us with a plan and a time frame as to when are they going to assist the South African undocumented learners. I know I went to the Eastern Cape, and in one school, there was about 67 learners that were undocumented, and they're South African learners. And I asked the principal, because the principal was from the area, and the principal said to me, which is something that I never thought, my eyes was not open to, that majority of the mothers of the children work far outside Eastern Cape. Maybe majority of them work in eThekwini, in the farms. So the children are left with grandparents. Some of them, the mothers, have not been home in a long time. And when they try to secure documents for the kids, they are required to do some DNA, and that's where the process gets stalled. So I think beyond us just writing a letter indicating and demanding a plan and a framework, we might need to engage with the Department of Home Affairs on the requirements of dealing with this process, and how are they going to deal with the backlog? Because in other areas, the backlog is even about the cost of doing DNA, where the child is left, or where the child is left with an aunt and the parents are not there, and the aunt doesn't know what to do in terms of assisting the child, because there's a DNA that is required and it requires money, and they don't have the money. It takes time. They must travel long distances to go to labs to get DNA. So I think we might have to have that discussion, so that you're correct, there must be a consented and focused intervention into the numbers that we've already identified, because we've got the information, we know where the learners are, we know in which district. So I think there must be that targeted intervention as soon as possible, because I fully agree with you that majority of these kids that would have met are not receiving any form of grants, and that is putting a burden on the people, the caregivers that are taking care of the children. Okay, honorable members, let me see. Okay. Honorable Mkhize, Honorable Chaba, Honorable Ngobeni, Honorable Magagula, Honorable Yodan, Honorable Low, and who else did I miss? Honorable Mgadi, right? Yeah. Okay. Ngube. It's Honorable Mgadi, right? Okay. So if I have missed anyone, please indicate if I have not recognized you and you raised your hand. Let's start, Honorable Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Chair. I must say this was a very good presentation conducted by very good presenters. I really appreciated how you present for the committee, to the committee. Chair, I just want to say I'm very worried that the Western Cape didn't participate because often on media, you see the Western Cape trying to model itself as the best country running all departments correctly. But when it's platforms of transparency like this one, they say this or that, they catch this, the dog that. It's worrying. Because if you want to role model yourself as a true, what called province of governance, you must then come forward when we are coming for accountability. The notes I've taken, Chair, is that PPN data is not reliable. It's worrying. Chair, you remember how emphatic I am on issues of data, because if you don't have it, you can't have conclusive, reports which explain the real situation on the ground. So if something could be done about data under the Department of Basic Education, please, it is killing you and it's killing the state in the process. There is no reference to ghost employees because you are scared of alleging people for criminality. It's worrying. It's like we're running the system of criminals here. If you are saying you're having 20 teachers, and I'm coming to you, I'm asking you to bring your teachers, you only bring 15, and you can't explain the 5, why I should fear to say these are ghost teachers? If it's not a system of criminals, I should be able to say these are ghost teachers. They are not physically there, and there's no evidence of their life. But still, I must fear to say these are ghost teachers. It doesn't work. It's an era of transformation, Chair. We can't fear criminals. We want to change this country. We want to make this department to be proper. So I will ask ELRC to stop fearing criminals. Report what you have found on the ground without fear of criminals. 438,076 head counted teachers from 21,000 schools. I think there's a lot of work that was done. So I'm really giving you a rousing applause, LRC. 10,322 learners are undocumented, and they're South Africans, most of them. It's worrying, Chair, and I need to know from the Basic Education of Department of Basic Education, what are they going to do to work with Home Affairs to solve this problem? Because it must be solved expeditiously. 11,715,000 documented learners. Well, it's good, but those who are not documented is worrying. Lot of data sets were outdated. I've been talking about data. Data issues keep on coming back. Now here we need to understand why it was outdated and what is being done to make sure that next time we'll have real-time data, not the outdated data. So I really need to know from ELRC and Department of Basic Education, what are you going to do to prevent this? First, why it was outdated, and secondly, what are you going to do to prevent this from happening again? Physically counted and signatures available. When the ELRC was conducting this process, you are physically counting and getting signatures. And I want to applaud you, ELRC, for that. This is what you are talking about when you talk about excellence in government. Prove that they are there. Verify that they are there physically. So your method, I highly, really appreciate it. 4 signatures of management were solicited. You know, when you talk about data integrity, this is what you are talking about. It shows there was some effort to make sure that our data has integrity. So thank you very much, ELRC. Teacher learner ratio, national 37%. It's worrying, it has to be solved. Yes, it has not gone beyond to 42 as it is the case in KZN, but still it has to be attended and be solved. Here's the problem. 3 or 4 schools without labs. I always talk about infrastructure, Chair. I'm worried. What is it one needs to say to make everyone see that issue of infrastructure is killing our pedagogical outcomes? So I need to know from the department, what are you doing to change the situation? Most undocumented learners as South Africans have spoken about that. 7,018 educators transferred between provinces and still appearing in both provinces is worrying, as the suggestion of double payment has been made. We need investigation, Chair, on this one. We need to pay by numbers. How many TA educators are double paid and get that money back and fire those who are criminals immediately? Person number not up to date. Why department? Why department? What are you doing? Those who deal with data, what are you doing in those offices? We need accountability on this one, Chair, and we need clear action plan to solve this. And 1,908 are non-South African teachers, and KZN is leading. Eastern Cape is following. EGP is number 3. We need to really put our hawk eyes on this one to understand why KZN is leading and why they don't have South African teachers occupying the post to the point that they give to foreigners. While currently we are having strikes in KZN, teachers are striking and they need employment. Last 3, Chair. Some worrying numbers were, that's what was said by the presenter. Some worrying numbers were explainable. So I want to ask, was it explainable through evidence available or it was explainable through common sense? Because if you say explainable, it could just be a common sense explanation. And when you do data, you don't use common sense as an explanation. You need verification sources. So I need them to clarify for me. If they say some numbers were explainable, what do they mean? Explainable by evidence or through common sense? Physically verified teachers are 438,076 from general school. But what they are not telling us here, what is the denominator of this number? What is the total number of people who are paying as educators? And why those people are not verifiable, excluding those who are in Western Cape, we still need to verify. I need a denominator here. What is the denominator of 438,076 teachers? So that we can have a percentage to say only 20% of teachers were verified. So that we know we have 80% to verify. Lastly, schools still receive funding while they've been closed. That is crime, Chair. That is crime, and I urge this committee to treat it as a crime. Certain cases must be opened here, people must be arrested. We need to know which are those schools which are still receiving funding while they are closed and where that money goes, so that those people can go to jail. And Chair, I hope you will take this issue seriously as we present it, and we make sure this committee we are able to subpoena people and make them to be investigated, be properly charged, and go where they deserve to go. Jail. Thank you, Chair.
Kunamanzi la eduze kwakho Kabazela. I think you need some sip of water as well.
Kubi Ntombi, i-department
Ngiyabona
ifile.
nami kubi kakhulu. Kubi kakhulu ngiyakubona.
So sifike nehlango manje meeting ngeke.
Honorable Kabanchaba.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chair, let me concur with Honorable Mkhize about the Western Cape. Why Western Cape excluded from the verification process, and how does this affect the credibility of the national data set? Given that educators may resign, retire, pass away, transfer, or leave employment during the verification process, how does the department ensure that the credibility and accuracy of the final data set? Does the report reflect a true picture of the education workforce, or morally a snapshot during a changing verification period? Chairperson, many educators and education workers reportedly used their own personal fund to obtain policy clearance certificate required during verification. While will these workers be reimbursed, and if so, what process and timeline has been established for repayment? Why were employees expected to carry the financial burden of compliance for a state-led verification process? Has DBE and Education Labor Relations Council budgeted for reimbursement of these out-of-pocket expenses? Chairperson, let me also concur with Honorable Mkhize about the ghost workers. Chairperson, this thing of naming this issue as if it's a nice thing, ghost workers. What explains the 22,837 record with no parcel mesh, and how many of these may indicated ghost employees or fraudulent appointment? How are you going to appoint the ghost as a person, as a human being person? And come, Bagit, what action will be taken regarding the 6.110 educators identified as not delivering instruction while occupying funded post, where salaries still being paid to educators who were absent, suspended, retired, or deceased? Has the department quantified the financial loss arising from duplicate payment, irregular appointment, and unmatched record? Have any matters been referred for forensic investigation, criminal prosecution, or disciplinary action? Honorable Chairperson, I'm a human being who knows what is the meaning of ghost. Ghost, Honorable Chairperson, if I may raising in my language, because the DG knows my language. I-ghost isipogo umuntu ongasekho emhlabeni. How are you going higher umuntu ongasekho emhlabeni? Because that thing is not even tangible. You can't even see sometimes. You can't touch it. But you are hiring it, you are paying it every day. People, they must tell us, why are they stealing the government money? Because they are the stealers of the government money. There is no ghost. You can't hide ghost. Ghost is a person that you can't see when it's dying. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mam Kaba. In that order, Honorable Ngobeni.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Ngobeni, what is funny?
Mam Chaba. Ute is pogi. We want to agree with that. Chair, we are dealing with very serious matters. However, Setswana se re lesolo golo ke ditshego. And so that's not lost on us, Chairperson. I wasn't going to be speaking about ghost workers, but I do think that I would like to strengthen Honorable Nchaba's point with regards to, I mean, I heard the presenter really trying to brush off this idea of ghost workers. We must understand that this idea really predates even our time in Parliament. Some of us have known teachers who have literally just been delinquent teachers who just don't show up for class, don't show up to teach learners, etc. And maybe because the idea of ghost workers, can be glibbed upon and swept under the carpet, and be given sort of technical responses to that particular question. Perhaps the apt question would be, how is the department dealing with delinquent teachers who are simply just, because they belong to the union or whatever the case may be, they feel that they are protected in some way, shape, or form, and so just are not showing up for class to be able to discharge their duties to our children. And so I thought I should open with that, Chair. I'm going to focus my commentary honestly around the alarming revelations. Firstly, the whole thing with the Western Cape, I can't even stress it more than what my colleagues have already stressed. Everyone is subject to accountability. There is absolutely no one, even if they were to come here and say we are not ready, let them do that so that they subject themselves to the process. There's no way that we can be receiving a response that says we simply will not participate. Who are you? Where do you think you are? Which law, which constitution, which institution do you believe you are answerable to? You're not answerable to Honorable Ngobeni, Honorable chairperson of the committee, Honorable Maimela. You're not answerable to all of us. You're answerable to the people of South Africa. That really cannot be understated, especially under the current climate. We're not going to accept that, and they may not care. The Western Cape Department of Education, they may not care about it, but South Africans must care about it. And we must put that on record without any equivocation, chairperson and members of this particular committee, which is why I entered the fray to say, can the DG please finish his remarks? Because there's absolutely no way. We would not accept it from any other department. We're not about to accept it with the Western Cape Department of Education. In fact, they must proceed to do what it is that they're doing, Honorable Chairperson. Let them do that, and then we will rate them through the calls when the time comes. They're not going to come to this committee as and when they wish to do so. When they are summoned to do so, they are summoned to do so. The same way we expect the minister to be in the committee. They're not above reproach, and so I don't think I can overstate that. But I did want to make it very clear that we're not going to accept that. And the day that they want to report, we will actually ice them and ban them from coming to this committee, and we will communicate to that level of seriousness with them. We are not going to accept that, Chairperson. My questions, Chair, I want to limit them to, just this particular alarming report that has been given to us here. Chair, I must underscore my comments by saying, what is interesting is that, there is a sense in which sometimes when we get these reports, everything is under control. However, we have seen SIU reports that tell us that there is disaster in the system, whether it's Home Affairs or whatever the case may be. And even the inefficiencies of Home Affairs affect our work here in this particular committee. I think it's very apt that we absolutely begin to bring Home Affairs and everybody else who's responsible in this particular, because we can't gaslight the people of South Africa. It's unfair. We are still getting parents who are saying, my kid is still not in school. It's now we're sitting at May. And South African children at that, who are still saying, I'm not in school, I'm not placed. How are we responding to that particular thing? I want to also say this, Chair, as I am now going to ask my questions, is to say perhaps the department needs to tell us, how are we dealing with
when we speak about undocumented learners? How are we dealing with what the Americans would call the dreamers? Children of parents who came to South Africa, they are undocumented, they are born here, they go to school here, and then, of course, either the parents die, they're lost in the manger, in the abyss. How are we treating those children? Because there are many of them who are in the system who are like this, because the inefficiency of the state to deal with issues of migration cannot be lost on the fact that it actually affects children who actually may be deemed as our own. And I know that, of course, children inherit their parents' calamities. But if, in fact, we're going to say that our system is going to allow children to be in the system, but then we don't have mechanisms through which we can deal with them either post-school or in school, then what are we saying? Because the progressive realization of our rights is exactly what we're talking about here, but it can't just be ad-libbed and not really addressed. So my first question has to do with compliance with regards to immigration and also educator legality. Chair, the SIU report has told us that we have got lots of illegal migrants into the country. They come in under the guise of being experts in their field, coming in with bogus qualifications, coming in with all manner of things, get into our departments and our state departments. And I want to understand how many of these cases have been referred by the Education Department to the Department of Home Affairs or law enforcement for further investigation. We would like to know what that is about, because we are dealing with people with invalid or expired documentation. We are dealing with people who don't have necessarily traceable work authorization. We're dealing with people who have mismatched identity records. I mean, the idea that someone can be, moving up, across the country with their identity, trying to do things, nefarious things on behalf of others, is absolutely alarming. We want to also understand, Chairperson, my second question, whether the department can clarify any salary payments that may have been made to individuals who could not legally be employed in the South African public education system, and whether the government has qualified the potential fiscal exposure linked to unlawful or irregular appointments involving foreign nationals, if we can understand what that looks like, because the exercise has uncovered over 22,000 records with no personal match. And we've got duplicate identities, we've got irregular appointments, we've got anomalies linked to foreign nationals. What does that look like in terms of how we are dealing with the matter? Sorry, Honorable Chairperson, people keep on disturbing my flow. And then I want to speak to Chairperson, my third question, the undocumented learners and the capacity of the state to deal with this particular issue. Chair, we are reporting 610 or so thousand undocumented learners. And yes, of course, we've got about 362,000 of them being South African learners and 751,000 of them being foreign national children. I mean, that's like for like. It's an abnormal situation. How are we allowing this to happen, and how are we dealing with it from the perspective of Home Affairs? So, how does the department distinguish between those children who are undocumented South Africans who are failed by the state and those who are undocumented children of foreign nationals who enter and remain in the system without lawful migration records? So what verification mechanisms currently exist to prevent the abuse of the schooling system through identity fraud, duplicate learner registration, and undocumented people in our country? I would like a response to that. My fourth and final question, Chair, speaks to, given the fact that this verification project has exposed duplicate identities, poor quality identity documentation, unmatched records, and administrative inconsistencies across provinces, what are the assessments that have been made of the broader national security risk posed by weak identity governance inside the education sector, particularly where the state's payroll systems may intersect with the immigration fraud, identity fraud, and organized document syndicates that are currently and have been exposed by the recently released SIU report? My final question, Chairperson, is that the department has presented this exercise as a governance and accountability success to this particular committee. But how we have seen findings that suggest that the state does not fully know who actually is employed, who is lawfully documented, who is physically present, and who is drawing salaries within parts of the education system. And so my question is, at what point does the department concede that South Africa's education administration challenge is no longer merely an administrative weakness, but a broader crisis of state control, border governance, and institutional credibility? If we can have those questions answered, Chair, I will be sufficiently responded to. Thank you very much for the indulgence, Chairperson and members.
Thank you, Honorable Ngobeni. It was Honorable Magagula or Honorable Law, Honorable Law or Honorable Magagula. I'm sorry.
It's me, yes. Thank you, Chairperson. I think I just want to start by making my remarks that as a person, maybe who doesn't know where Western Cape is, maybe I'll get a response as to, is the Western Cape part of South Africa or somewhere outside South Africa? Because I think all the time in this portfolio committee, Western Cape wants to be treated differently or special, and they're not special because they belong to. Now I'm back. Now they belong to South Africa. Now I know where they belong. They belong to South Africa, so we can't treat them special most of the time. Secondly, on that, I think according to me, they're even undermining their member, who is the minister in the same department, for not want to account. How are we going to see the example? Because they need to be the one who's leading in terms of accountability, leading other provinces, because they have confidence to their member who is leading the department at national level, but they continued to undermining everybody. I think they must come clear whether they still belong to South Africa or not, and do they want to account to this portfolio or not? And if they don't, they must state their reasons as to why. But as long as they still in South Africa and they still exist, what are they hiding if there's not something bigger than we anticipate? It means these ghost workers, there's a lot of them in the Western Cape. But Chair, I'm not there. I've got my own questions also, but they must take note, even the minister must take note of that Western Cape is super. Chair, my questions are like on the provincial accountability. I just want to check, why do Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and Free State reflect significantly higher anomality rates than other provinces? When the survey was made, did they find the reason why? And two, what accountability measures will apply to provincial heads of department where serious administrative failures are identified? And what explains the uneven quality of data across provinces? And what interventions are planned to address weak provincial capacity? On the data integrity and verification methodology, how was single sitting physical verification enforced and independently audited? What safeguards prevent post-submission manipulation of records? What margin of error was considered acceptable in the verification process? And how were poor quality identity documents, foreign national appointments, and incomplete personnel files handled? What proportion of flagged record has already been resolved, and how many remain unresolved? Chair, I think I've got some recommendations to make also. That I think the verification process must not be once off, or when it's needed. Like any other person who's receiving a salary from the government, even USASA, there are times, sometimes after 12 months or 3 years, they verify the beneficiaries. I think even in the Department of Learning, that should happen. That after sometimes verification processes, person to person, it should be held, but also raising a question also to the payroll department, those who are handling payroll. I mean, every time you are paying, but you can see that there's a duplication of AMA IDs. It doesn't raise questions or red flags that there's something unusual here, and stick on that and investigate and find out what's happening. Unless there are something which is it gives us a perception that it means it's something which is been done purposely for certain reason which is unknown to us. But I think that's what it's supposed to happen. That even if it's after 2 years, after 2 years or after 12 months, a verification of person to person, it must be done. And for those, whether it's a province or it's a district, which will not bring physical people to be counted or to be verified, it should be a penalty lay against those people will be found done that. And on the undocumented, especially top 4 South Africans, there are many reasons which were found when we're doing our constituency work. There's a late registration, which means that I think the 30 days registration should be reviewed, because especially in our culture, we'll find that some of the reasons is that the mother has to consult with the father in using the surname of the child, and it will take time, because some of the families have to come together and say, if you want to use your surname to our grandchild, you must do 1, 2, 3 first. So do it, and it won't take 30 days. It will take more than that. So I think it should be the 30 days registration should be reviewed, because it's little in terms of that. But also where there are disputes, it's also a cause of late delayment on registration of the certificate of a child. And that is why sometimes when a child is attending a school, and it's worse when it's supposed to go to grade 12, where an ID it's needed, a child will write an exam without an ID, and it's a cause of a challenge, which you'll find out at the end of the day, the child don't get a metric certificate. Yeah, I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Makakula. Honorable Low.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Let me start by welcoming the presentation and would not want to lie. I'm quite disappointed on the conduct and behavior of the Department of Western Cape. And I'm referring this mainly because, Chair, if you will recall, this is the third fort where we would have to call them in where we need information. This is the third fort where we will have to battle with them, or we would need relevant documentation for them to assist and align with what is required by the Constitution. And I think they've been undermining the portfolio committee for too long. Even not the portfolio committee alone, but stakeholders within the Department of Basic Education, because in simplicity, there is no way where an entity or a stakeholder that is regulated with all the imperatives, the way that has been working with other provinces is saying to you, this is what we are doing as we've been doing other provinces, this is the work that we've done. And then they are to stop the work, they are to deal with the integrity of the program, and they are to delay. And it's. I want to echo what Honorable Magagula and Honorable Kaba said. It might be that there is a lot that might be hiding. There's a lot that they might be not wanting to show us, as we could have been saying in the portfolio committee. That's why they are not putting to this far. So I think it is quite enormous that we look on to such behaviors in departments that does not want to deal with reforms and change and want to reverse the gains of democracy, because systems in place are as a result for us to continuously responding on to the systematic challenges and to put into place effective mechanism that seeks to respond to the difficulties or contradictory issues that might be troubling the department. So such a behavior, Chair, must look on to. So, Chair, I would have went through to the presentation that could have spoken on to a lot of issues. And on the project, although it has attained a lot of strong reconciliation outcomes, there were major concerns that remain regarding the credibility and reliability of the education workforce data. More whereby we need to look on to the 22,837 records that had no parcel match, and the 22,409 parcel records that were flagged, including the 177 exact duplicate records that were identified and 573 irregular duplicates that were found. In addition, if you look onto the total of the educators, which is 6,110, who were confirmed not delivering instruction, while if you look onto the 7,018 transferred educators, they still required reconciliation. It means if you look deeper onto this system, it further assists you to be precise in terms of your numbers and be able to identify the failure and the credibility of the system, and for you to improve time to time and to deal with the poor quality identification of documentation and the inconsistent information that we find to be confronted with in your duplicate parcel numbers and the non-standard appointments that further undermines the confidence in the integrity of the system. So these are the issues that we need to look on to. Hence, when you look on to it, further engages onto the provincial disparities in the Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and Free State, where there are uneven administrative capacity and weak provincial governance structures. And it raises serious concern about whether provincial departments can be entrusted to maintain accuracy workforce records without continuous external verification. Now, it brings us back to Western Cape to say, if we are not able to have phase one, we will not be able to identify these weaknesses, able to be able to give effect as to where do we need to deal with the ramification, and where do we need to deal with the mystification of saying that how therefore do we get accurately to know, how do we avoid to not have ghost workers, how do we not have to count properly the learners that we need to budget for and deal with issues of concern. And what it also does, Chair, it has also revealed a severe infrastructure inequality across schools, where it gave us a 33% schools that is lacked access to municipal water or electricity, while more than 72% lack science or computer laboratories, where many schools lack secure fencing and other basics. So we know these things. So I'm raising all of this because, Chair, if we are able to identify such disparities that are aligned in numerical orders and put into correct data, we are able to look onto the disparities of our provinces, and we are able to identify the key challenges that therefore confront us, and we are able therefore to respond to the need to align and be able to support the ELRC so that they are able to do their work and they are able to deal with transparency and accountability that is expected from our good self. So we must applaud the fact that if phase one is quite responsive and they have dealt with key issues that are quite important, I think they must be given support, and we must make sure that we enforce, and then we need to get to know, because I want to believe before that we want to speak of other 8 provinces, and for us to have integrity and to have the accurate data, we will need to close the space of the Western Cape. So I would like to know what could have been the mitigating factors from the department with regard to the reluctancy of the Western Cape not sending the information, more so from the minister, because I would expect a more political intervention from the minister, as we've seen the minister, she, in most instances, when there are issues in Western Cape, should be the first to go there. So we'd want to know what becomes the response and the mitigating factors from the department in making sure that Western Cape is in compliance, because they need to give assurity in all that they could have raised. And I'll also want to go to how will the ELRC address dispute arising from flagged or unmatched records, and also would want to know what does the DBA regard as the most important findings emerging from the report, and how will the findings influence the post-provision and workforce planning. I would also want to know what action will be taken regarding I know it was also asked by another member, but I thought that I should emphasize on it. What actions will be taken regarding the 6,110 educators that were identified not delivering instruction? And then how will the department address the 7,018 transferred educators requiring reconciliation? Would need to know about that because I highlighted it in my notes. I'll also want to know what consequence will apply where systematic data manipulations is been identified. If it happens that Western Cape is being verified, what consequence will apply where systematic data manipulations is identified? Will provincial level departments be required to account for anomalies identified in their provinces? How will the department ensure that future workforce data remains accurate and up to date? And then we would also want to know, does the verification report indicate broader governance weaknesses within the education system? What does the report reveal about the state capacity in education administration? Could similar verification systems be implemented in other sectors of government? And what safeguards are necessary to balance digital verification with privacy rights? Having to say that, Chair, I wish to submit. Thank you.
Honorable Mgadi, and I think it was Honorable Yodan. Sorry, Honorable Yodan.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me begin by welcoming this presentation and the findings that are presented to the committee. Greetings to yourself and to the stakeholders present. The methodology employed is both innovative and deeply insightful, and the analysis provides a far more evidence-based understanding of systemic risks and government weaknesses within the education sector. Importantly, the findings raise serious concerns around data integrity, accountability, human resource management, learner support, and possible financial leakages that cannot simply be ignored. At the same time, I think it's important that our engagement remains grounded in the evidence and findings presented before the committee rather than speculation or unfounded allegations. The value of this exercise lies precisely in the fact that it provides measurable, verifiable data and can assist the department, Parliament, and other oversight bodies to identify weaknesses, strengthen controls, and ensure that resources intended for learners are protected. In that context, I'd like to pose the following questions to the department and to the ELRC. The presentation references abnormal appointments in the Eastern Cape. What specifically constituted abnormal, and have any officials been suspended or investigated as a result? Or is that going to be implemented after the report has been concluded? Was compliance in terms of SACE registration and vetting of educators also verified? What will the department do with the outcome and strategic recommendations of this analysis? Will the findings on misconduct be reported to various authorities such as the National Treasury, the Auditor General, the SIU, or law enforcement agencies. For example, the 47 invisible individuals that are office-based staff that have been mentioned, as well as ghost employees and the like that's been mentioned by colleagues that have spoken before me. What financial exposure has the department quantified in relation to duplicate payments or schools receiving funds, as the chair of the ELRC has referred to, and have any recovery processes or disciplinary proceedings commenced with regards to this? How does the department distinguish between administrative capture errors and potentially fraudulent appointments or identity irregularities, or is this something that has not yet been investigated? Then, Chair, 3 more questions. Can the department indicate what the definition of extended sick leave is? I think Honorable Lowe also referred to the 6,110 individuals not delivering instruction, and many of them being absent without leave or on extended sick leave. And in the view of DBE, what systemic failure is uncovered by this finding? Then, Chair, with regard to acting principals, we've also found during our oversight that several schools across the country have cited that there are acting principals appointed and that they're awaiting the appointment of principals, sometimes even for years. What's the reason for the difficulty of the department to appoint principals across the country? Then lastly, Chairperson, given that approximately 60% of the 610,322 undocumented learners identified are South African citizens, what coordinated interventions is the department undertaking with Home Affairs and Social Development to ensure that these learners obtain the necessary documentation? And I think I want to also echo the sentiments of previous speakers. This is particularly concerning in light of the Secretary General's indication that the department has identified a direct correlation between access to social assistance and reduced learner dropout rates. And we've also seen in the matric results from last year that there's improved performance in quintile 1 to 3 schools where learners receive social grants in comparison to those that do not. These learners are also further locked out of opportunity because of not being able to complete their schooling and then being less employable, perpetuating poverty in our country. How's the department addressing the undocumented South African learners with Home Affairs and Social Development, as there must be interdepartmental collaboration with regards to this?
Honorable Mgadi.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and all official presence, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Department of Education, accountability and anti-corruption, the use of immutable audits, trials, automatic verification, and multi-stakeholder sign-off mechanisms threatening accountability and reduce the opportunity for manipulation. Chairperson, the public sector corruption and the payroll fraud remain significant challenges in South Africa. According to the Public Service Commission, weak human resource control contributes to financial losses and inefficiency across government department. My question, what financial benefits are expected from eliminating, regulating, and improving payroll integrity? Has the ELRC quantified the possible fiscal exposure linked to educators now, non-delivery instruction? Has the department established where the salaries payments continue in cases involving AWOL or suspended educators? Another thing, Chairperson, eyinkinga kakhulu. I-Western Cape Department of Education chairperson lives on his own land. Bahlul manje. I think sikhona istep ekufanele sithathwe nge-Western Cape Department wakhona uyahlupha. Ngiyabonga chairperson, other members angikhavile kwamanye ama-questions njengomuntu umuntu okugcina ngci ekukhulumeni. Ngiyabonga chairperson. I'm the last person today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable.
Sewabuza nebuziwe.
Thank you, Honorable Mkadi.
Bese ngasafuna ukusala.
I just want to appreciate once again the ELRC for the work you've done. And I think the comments of the members are spot on to say we have been speaking about some of these challenges that you've picked up on the ground. And there has never been a time where we had verifiable information or report where we can say, according to this report or according to this exercise. And this exercise for me, I want to agree with Honorable Jordan that the methodology used really gives you assurance and it really gives credibility to the information in the report that is produced. So you are able to stand and speak with confidence about the number of teachers that are in the schooling system in a specific district, in a specific circuit at the time, or in a specific school, and the number of learners that are in those schools. So one, I want to agree with members that there are issues which are flagged, which are said, these are urgent issues that are flagged that ought to be dealt with. And as I had said when I started, members, that I believe we need a second session with both the council and specific PED by PED, where we receive specific information about specific districts, where the report is able to say in District A, in this specific 4 schools, we found out that there were 3 teachers that appear twice. They appear in this school, but they also appear in another district. And they appear in the PESEL system twice. Or these teachers are no longer in the system, but they appear in the PESEL system. So I think we might need to have that kind of an exercise because my understanding is that there is serious effort that has been employed in doing this exercise. There is funds that went into commissioning this exercise. So the report can't just be shelved and gather dust. Actions that come out of this report, because when we do sanction reports of this nature, we do so in order to try and improve our systems. We are trying to say, what are the gaps in our systems and how do we deal with those gaps? So this exercise assists you to really pinpoint where the gap is, where the problems are. So I think as a follow-up, as a portfolio committee, we might need to call PED by PED, and specifically we mandate that PED to speak to the identified issues, where there is issues of fraud. The report flags that there might be a fraudulent activity in this matter. As the presenter was saying, that there are areas where the PEDs came back and they had conducted investigation and they were able to give you reports of those investigations. We want those reports and we want further investigations on the issues that were flagged for urgent intervention. So I agree with members that there must be consequences where, because if there is even one educator that is paid and is not in the system, there must be investigation as to who is receiving that money and how long have they been receiving that money, because that's money, that is public money, and it could have been utilized to employ teachers that are much needed in the education system. The second aspect, I think, so what I'm saying as a way forward, and I'm saying this way forward even before the responses, is that we are going to have those sessions immediately when we reopen. I think we should fit that work into our next term. The second issue for me is on the issue of undocumented learners. And as I said that perhaps we need to go beyond just writing to Home Affairs, to bring Home Affairs to give us a plan with timelines on how we're going to assist those undocumented South African learners to be documented, how we're going to facilitate that process. And perhaps meeting with the Home Affairs will be able to give clarity to us if they understand the situation on the ground, because the cases are complex, the cases are different. In other areas, indeed, parents are not there. And as a result, the people who are taking care of those children do not even know. You ask them, they tell you, we are taken from pillar to post in terms of the Home Affairs process. And they end up giving up because it requires money. It requires money they don't have. So I think that is one of also the urgent issues. And of course, Home Affairs will then be able to say to us what Honorable Ngobeni was raising. How then do you deal with the undocumented non-South African learners? Because in my view, the decision of the Constitutional Court to say you can't deny education to any child, as much as it's in our Constitution, for me, it doesn't make sense for us to spend so much money, because we invest in these children, in their education. We pay for a teacher before them. We ensure that they have LTSM. We ensure that we pay for electricity so that they've got, we pay for a classroom. And we just say, no, we will do that for 12 years. But this learner can just leave the education system without any form of certification. Because in our value system, you can't go to any employer anywhere else. Of course, unemployment is a crisis, but you can't go anywhere else and say, well, I studied for 12 years with the word of mouth. So what is the purpose? What is the purpose of us educating these children if we are not going to certify them? Because the purpose of saying we can't deny them education is so that we recognize the value of education as a right, and we recognize what education does and how it gives any other individual, how it empowers them. Now, how do you then empower them, but you are not willing to recognize that empowerment? Because the certification is to say we can affirm or confirm that this young person called Joy Maimela has been educated within our system and they have passed the minimum requirement mark. So if we can't do that, then what is the purpose? What is the intent objective? So we need to deal with that question, because for me, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we're ultimately, when we are going to be reporting and speaking about the progress we're making as a country in terms of educating our citizens, we should be able to say with evidence that we have been able to matriculate 12 million young children over this period of time, and all of them have NSC certificates. So I think that's something that we must deal with as a matter of agency with Home Affairs. More so for South African children who it's not up to their own doing that they find themselves in those predicament. We can't deny those children a future because of the circumstances of their parents. And as a result, I do believe that this is something that we must urgently entertain, because one of the things that we even went, and when we engage with the schools on the ground and the PEDs, it's even the confusion on the funding of those learners. Other schools say no, because these learners are not documented, they don't receive standard and norms. And other schools say no, they do receive standard and norms. We don't actually require documents. We just require the head count, where you just say there's 50 learners in a class. So even the allocation of funds, when you can't account for about 600 something thousand learners, it's an issue. Now, getting into the issues about possible fraudulent activities and ghost teachers. or ghost employees in the system. I fully agree with the members that it's something that we can't just downplay. We can't downplay it, and we cannot. I'm saying we can't downplay it because, one, when we do conduct oversight, when we go to schools where there is chronic underperformance, and you get to a school, there is a teacher, the entire class, out of the entire class, only 2% of the learners passed a certain subject. It makes you ask question about that teacher. The second question I'm asking myself is that if I've got an employee, if you've got a helper at home who's an employee, a household employee, and they don't come to work for 3 days, there is no one of us who will allow that, or who will just sit and be what Honorable Ngobeni will say, nonchalant about it, because this employee impacts directly on your ability to also become productive. So if a helper at home does not come to work for 3 days, you also can't go to work. So you can't be productive. And that can't be, we can't let that go. But in this instance, you get a sense that circuit managers, even where a teacher underperforms for about 3 consecutive years, where a teacher is producing 0%, and when you listen to the circuit, you can't hear that they are actually concerned or they tried to do any intervention. And these are some of those teachers who we are paying them as a state, we're recording them as being there as a resource that we have employed, but that resource is not in front of learners. So because it's not our children that are failing, it's not our children that are being inconvenienced, many of these officials just, turn a blind eye on it. And I think that's something that we must address as a matter of urgency. So we must bring all those PEDs, they must account for those teachers that are flagged. All of them, they must tell us one by one that teacher X was flagged as having not been to school for 3 months. The teacher was here and here and here and here, and they were getting paid this, and there was a what, and the teacher was away because of what. I think there must be accountability for each and every teacher that is flagged in the system. If there is a teacher that is appearing in one school and another school, or is appearing in 2 different departments on the person, then there must be accountability. We must be told why. And which salary was that teacher getting? Was it the salary of basic education, or was it the salary of another department? And if that teacher was getting double salaries, we want to know if they were. So those investigations, I think that's what we are saying to DPE, is that you must inform all the PEDs that we're going to be doing this exercise. They must start doing those investigations here before the portfolio committee. They've got clear answers when we finally meet with them. The issue of, I also wanted to then come to the independent schools, because I wanted to understand if your scope extended to independent schools in terms of the head count, in terms of the head count of teachers, because if it has not, it will then respond to why you've got this number of non-South African teachers in the system, because that situation is very rife in the independent schools. And it's not something now that we are just thumb-sucking. It's something that we witness when we do oversight. That out of 12 teachers in a school, in an independent school, about 8 of them or 9 of them are foreign national teachers. So the independent schools must tell us what is wrong with our own teachers. What is it that they're trying to attract that is not here in the country? Because we can't be crying about these high levels of unemployment when we're saying there's graduate unemployment, but still, as the same country that is having that high number of unemployment, we still go and seek skills that we produce from somewhere else. Then we must be told, we must actually know what is lacking in the skills that we are producing as a country. So I think if this work has not extended to independent schools, DG, I think it must. I think the department must start a discussion with the independent schools and extend this exercise to because when we say we want to know the entirety of the status of our schooling system, and these are mechanisms that are utilized to understand, then it must also extend to independent schools because they are independent schools in South Africa. They have been granted registration status by us as government. So they can't be immune to us as government initiating a process to improve our education system. If we want to improve our education system through different initiatives, they can't be immune from that. So I think I definitely want to know how the department is planning to ensure that we extend this exercise to independent schools in the country. Now, I want to now go to the issue of the Western Cape. You see, I want to fully agree with the members on their concerns. The Western Cape PED, and sometimes in this very same committee, we are told how we should advise or encourage other PEDs to actually leverage on the good governance of the Western Cape. How do you say you are a panacea of good governance when you can't subject your processes and your systems to scrutiny? Where is transparency in that? Where is accountability in that? Why would you come and sit on some pedestal and say, well, we have some problems of overcrowding in our classes because we've got, but you don't want to participate in a process that is going to assist government to plan. Now, I also want to know, DG, because I agree with members who are tired of raising the same thing. Now, Section 59 of South African Schools Act, or maybe the first question is, public schools in this country, they are a property of the state, right? That's number one. Number two, if we are saying we could not do this exercise in the Western Cape because the MEC refused, okay. What happens when in one school there is an incident where there is serious prejudice or discrimination happening against a learner? And then the MEC says, no, you can't go to that school. Do we not go to that school? Section 59 of South African Schools Act and speaks about duty of schools to provide information. I want to know from the department. So what you are saying to us is that the Western Cape can do as they please. They are a PED that have serious powers to refuse schools because, by the way, at least if ELRC was saying, no, we could not get information from the provincial department because they've got concerns. But there is no way the Western Cape can bar us from getting information from schools. So if we need information from any school in the Western Cape, there is no way an MEC can bar us from getting information from a school. Because my question and the questions that came into my mind, DG, was, okay, who pays for the salaries of the educators in the public schools in the Western Cape? So, their allocation of salaries, equitable share, comes from somewhere else, not the national treasury. Who pays for the standard and norms of the schools in the Western Cape? So, their standard and norms budget comes from somewhere else, not in this country. Now, if we are the ones, we're now going to be adopting a budget and doing a budget vote. Part of that budget goes to the Western Cape. Then we are told that we can't conduct an exercise that wants to verify physically the number of teachers who are paying in a province. I don't think that makes sense. And I don't think that we should accept that. I don't think that that can ever be acceptable to any person. Because if we are allocating resources to that province, if amongst the standard and norms that we are paying, the equitable share that we are allocating to provinces, part of that province or one of those provinces is the Western Cape, then the Western Cape can't tell us that we cannot physically verify the personnel that we are paying. I don't think that makes sense at all. And I want to know from you as the department in terms of, because you always tell us about the concurrent functions. What about the duty of the schools to provide information? Don't these schools have a duty to provide information? And I want to know, as the department now, what are your intended interventions? Because we want that information. The Western Cape has around, and that is data in 2016, 1.something million, 1.1 million learners. In terms of the 2016 data, they've got about 33,254 educators. We want that physical verification of those learners and teachers. And we don't want a physical verification that is done by them. The reason why the ELRC was an institution that was seen fit to conduct this exercise is because it then came as an independent institution, an independent body. Because you couldn't say, DPE, go and do this exercise on yourselves. So I really want to know from DPE what you are saying in terms of the correct intervention that should be accorded, because we want that information. We can't say it's water under the bridge. We want to know what is the state of schooling infrastructure, because this information even gives us the state of the schooling infrastructure. What is the status of the physical verification of the teachers in the PED of the Western Cape, and what is the status of the number of learners that are in it? So that we know about issues of learner-teacher ratio. How are they impacted? About what the Western Cape Department has been telling us, that they've got a high migration rate. How are they impacted on the ground? So I don't think we're going to accept this thing of the West. I don't think we should accept it. I don't see why we should accept it in the first place. Lastly, on the very same matter, when I was saying that I do not want to say, then the same PED has the audacity to question and cast aspersion on a process that they refused to participate in. So they don't participate. They say, no, Poppy Act. And I think that's an excuse. And then they come up and say, no, you know what, that exercise you conducted actually is not that significant, because it's not even the same. Because they are trying to tarnish the outcomes of this report on the basis that this report should seem insignificant because they did not participate. And I agree with Honorable Makagule that the fact that they did not participate, it actually says, it raises an alarm that they are hiding things that they don't want us to see. One of the strongest or the strength of this government is that we allow ourselves transparency. And with transparency, we are able to deal with many issues. We're able to deal with corruption. We're able to detect when there is fraud, when there's corruption. So if the Western Cape wants to behave like some form of, I don't know what they want to behave like, we'll not accept it. Because I agree with Honorable, perhaps they are the ones with many ghost teachers. Perhaps they're the ones that are hiding ghost teachers there and there. Because why are they not agreeing to subject themselves to a transparent process? When all other provinces subject themselves, even when these other provinces know that there might be issues that are found here, but they agreed because they understand that they don't own departments. They don't own departments. The departments are not theirs. Departments are state, it's government. So I think that's something that we must actually raise and find ways to engage with the Western Cape. We are meeting with them, I know, honorable members, within the term as a follow-up to that investigation on the allegations of racial profiling. I think we need to really raise this thing sharply with them. But beyond raising them sharply with them, we want to hear DPE as to what are the interventions, because this exercise must happen. And this time around, when this exercise must happen, it must actually happen at their own cost. Because when it was happening, they decided to behave in the way that they behaved. But this exercise, ultimately, it must happen. If it means as a portfolio committee, we must actually consider what are the legal remedies that are before us to compel legally that department to actually conduct this exercise. Then that's something that must be done. Because there is no way that we can sit with this crisis that we are faced with, especially with issues of undocumented non-South Africans, that we're having marches in the entire country where South Africans are complaining, and we are unable to provide tangible numbers. And this exercise has just proven now that it can assist us. It has assisted us to provide tangible numbers. It has assisted us to say, yes, we go to schools where we hear there's undocumented South African learners, but actually here is the number. And this is where those learners are. So in the Western Cape, you might find there's many learners in the farms who are not documented. We can't assist those learners. Even when the Home Affairs is going to intervene in these numbers that we have now, in the Western Cape, they can't assist those learners. They can't assist those children because some MEC somewhere decided that, he owns a department. So I think that that's something that we will not accept. I think those were my questions. I'm going to allow firstly starting with DM and DG, and then we go to the council for responses on the questions. DM.
Thank you, Chair. As the DG, thank you very much for all the questions. And as the DG indicated that we'll send a letter to the chairperson, the letter of the Western Cape, I believe that that will help us a bit. But if we looked at the report, the way it is, I don't know whether maybe I read it wrong, but we don't have a sizable number of what we'll call ghost workers. But what will constitute a ghost worker here is that I, Regina, have resigned from the work in June, but my salary will come until December. And that constitutes a ghost worker because at the time the money is included in my account, but I will get it as Regina. But until by the time they terminate my service, it takes a bit longer in some provinces. So that's what makes that. Sometimes a replacement teacher comes to the system, then it will take 2 to 3 months to terminate the salary of that teacher. When I look at the report, it's not that they found people who are getting, like it happened in some years back, where you find that officials are giving salaries to their own personal account of people that they claim that are in the system. So now that has not been found exactly as happening that way. What is those things that people are not effective in their job? They know that I've submitted my retirement on this date. Instead of it being processed same time, then they allow my salary to come in, whether retired, whether resigned. That is mostly our problem sitting here, which we must improve our efficiencies as the system. DG, let me give to you and the team to clarify some of the questions that came. But on the Western Cape, I said let's wait for that letter, and I'll believe that we can take an in committee as the portfolio committee to discuss the issue of Western Cape and the action that might follow, because we cannot have one department that is autonomous within a system that is working together. The fact that we say it's a concurrent function, it doesn't mean that concurrent as it is. We're a unitary state. We have one minister of basic education. So, and all of them, they account to the system, not to say that each province is a standalone. There's nothing like that in education, though it's a concurrent function because they have their own legislature and their own portfolio committee, but we must work as one, as the system, because we have one education system in the country. So, Tichi, are you still in the meeting?
Very much so, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Okay, let me allow you.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, let me also join the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee for Basic Education in welcoming this incredibly valuable report. Headcount, as Honorable Makakula correctly observed, is done regularly within a cycle of 3 to 5 years, because it's a huge undertaking. But with now the advent of technology and artificial intelligence, we can do it much more frequent than we've been doing it before. The reason is because mass-based system or large systems with many employees and learners and other variables are obliged to do that because your systems have to be refreshed now and again. Honorable Ngobeni, it doesn't mean that it's a crisis, but the extent of the problem might maybe point to specific weaknesses in the system. But it's mandatory that on regular basis you do headcount in large organizations such as ours. 460,000 teachers, 13.7 million learners, 24,000 schools, 23,000 of those being public schools. You have to refresh your system now and again. Without justifying anything, Chair, India, and India is quite big. You know that even their population is bigger than the population of China. It's them to notice that a teacher has not been going to school. So regular monitoring and using technology to even enhance our vigilance as a system, to check whether teachers are there, learners to come to school regularly, and all other variables that are related to running the system efficient, are things that we want to make sure that they do happen. Now, the problem of the Western Cape is very simple.
I don't know if it's me, but you are breaking a bit.
Complicated as we want it. Issued a circular. The circular is directed to our club. Is it the problem of the chair or of everybody? Because the chair has got a problem of connectivity at Acacia.
No, you're fine now. You're fine now, DJ.
Your connectivity has been flooded, we know, in Acacia.
No, but you have been breaking up, Chair, the DG.
Is it? Sorry, Honorable van der Walt.
Sorry,
Okay.
but Acacia as well, so maybe it's Acacia.
No, Chairperson and Honourable van der Walt, DG has been breaking. I've also had the same problem, unfortunately.
Now, I'm moving even out of the room. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you now. It's better now.
Yeah, I'll even
Go
go
back.
up the mountain if there's a need to do so. No, I was saying the problem of the Western Cape is not as complex as we tend to make it to be. It's very simple. The Department of Public Service and Administration has issued a circular, which is a directive to all accounting officers. And that's why when sometimes I say the roles of the head of the department and the MEC as the executing authority are separate or are distinct but complementary. The MEC can't say to an administrative process that it can't proceed. The MEC can advise that when you proceed with this exercise, here are the risks. Please be woeful of the risks. But even for wording it in a letter to suggest that the MEC has given an instruction for an administrative process not to proceed, it's very unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened. The actual person who must account is the head of the department, not the MEC. Because although the MEC issued an instruction, this is a process of the administrator from the circular of the Department of Public Service and Administration. The circular is not directed at ministers or MECs. It's directed at accounting officers or heads of the department. And it's an accounting responsibility which is clearly located within the purview of the accounting officer and not the executing authority. But maybe when we meet with them, that can be clarified. Because I even said to my colleague, I'm really shocked that this happened. I can't believe that it happened. But at times, you don't want to go too far to be seen to encroaching the space of another accounting officer and an executing authority. But ideally, it should not happen. The person who's got to answer is the head of the department here and not the MEC, in my view. I hope I've made valuable inputs there. Now, how do we intend moving forward with this? Provinces have been given this data a while ago, I think February or March, or as early as January, with red flags. They were expected to go and address these red flags. And I'm pleased, Chair, to learn that you are saying you are now going to call us back to come and address you on those red flags, on issues that were urgent, on issues that require to be dealt with over time. What has DBE done? DBE has identified 4 strengths of focus, 4 multidisciplinary teams. The first one is the HR team, which is led by the DDG responsible for teachers, because the majority of HR employees there are teachers. Working through our HR subcommittee of HEDCOM, dealing with the issue of getting PERSAL to be regularly updated, because part of the problem is that PERSAL is not regularly updated. When people leave the system, it takes long for the system to be updated. That's the first thing. The second issue, in terms of the employment of teachers with foreign nationals, the same HR committee, because the requirement of the Department of Home Affairs is that people who are employed in the country should be people with scarce skills. At some point, we did need teachers with scarce skills such as math, science, and technology, which we didn't have. Now we even have some foreign nationals who are employed to even teach home languages of South Africa, what I've come across in some of the districts. So we need to deal with that, Honorable Mkhize, as you indicated, to make sure that people who do not offer scarce skills that we desperately need are replaced by teachers in South Africa who are unemployed. The second multidisciplinary team will be dealing with undocumented learners, both children of foreign descent and South African children, working with the Department of Home Affairs. And I'm happy, Chair, you're saying you are also going to invite them when you invite us, so that both of us would come and account to you on mechanisms that we have put in place and how far we have gone with dealing with the issue of undocumented learners. The third stream has to do with infrastructure, because part of what this report has indicated as a supplementary information that we have received is the state of our infrastructure in schools. To follow up on those things and make sure that our state of infrastructure in schools is addressed as quickly as possible. So those are the four streams that we have identified. Of course, the other one, the last one, will be about dealing with our EMI system. We've in the process of finalizing the modernization of SASMs, LURITs as part of our module that tracks our learners. We want that to be also something that is receiving attention, and make sure that we deal with it in that way. I'm not sure whether, Chair, you'd want me to address the issues of honorable members one by one, which I could do, but I just thought that this is how, when we received this report, we identified these four areas and said these four areas are going to be driving the work that we do. But I can get into, for instance, the issues raised by honorable members one by one, if you want me to do so. For
I think
instance,
what will assist us. Okay.
I beg your pardon, Chair?
No. I was saying, I think what will assist for us
Hmm.
is when we do call these provinces one by one,
Yes.
you also come to report on the progress of the strengths that you have identified and the work you're doing. So
Indeed.
come and say, this is how we modernize the EMAS system. This is how we're going to improve the PESAL. This is how that's what we've started doing. This is what we're doing now.
Yes, Chair.
Directed to you for now that you think, please respond to those.
Okay. I wanted to start with Honorable Mkhize. Okay, Honorable Mkhize also made an observation about the Western Cape. The issue of Home Affairs, I've addressed it. We are acting together in concert with Home Affairs to address the issue of undocumented learners. Honorable Mkhize also raised the issue of learner-teacher ratio in KZN, alarming, which needs to be dealt with. Yes, but what is interesting is that the split between non-personnel and personnel expenditure in KZN is the highest. It's over 90%, which is the highest of all the 9 provinces. But it does not seem to necessarily translate into an improved learner-teacher ratio, which is something that, of course, we need to address, as Honorable Mkhize has indicated. The undocumented learners, I've indicated what we are doing about it. What is the total number that we are paying of educators? Provinces can indicate that. I don't have that offhand, but I can give you that the original base of the total number of teachers that I've referred to is 460,000, but provinces can talk to their proportion per province when we meet with them. Schools are still receiving funding for norms and standards while they are closed. Yes, we did take this up with them. And by the way, we'll also give you a preliminary report that the line function that is responsible for provinces was able to pick up when they went out to confirm these schools, that schools had been closed, but money was still being paid and was paid into a certain account. We did. Mr. Ndlebe was leading a team. And I think if he's on the platform and Mrs. Monday can also just comment if they are able to do that. Honorable Kaba, on a lighter note, indeed, the ghosts that we have, the modern ghosts that we have, when we say we're a ghost teacher, DM attempted to explain that it's not actually a ghost in the full dictionary sense of the word. The money that has been used for this project, Honorable Kaba, it's the contribution of the employer and employee parties. In other words, the employer has got a contribution that they are making, but employees also contribute towards the fund. And I must commend our 5 teacher unions. I've never seen this happening anywhere in the world, where people sacrifice their contribution to help the employer to solve a problem that ordinarily should be solved by the employer. I think it highlights the level of working together that we have between the employer and employee parties in the ELRC under the leadership of the General Secretary and the Chair of the ELRC. So we did not take their back pays, Honorable Kaba. They still have their back pays. Their back pays, I understand them as being their pensions and their pensions and even their bonuses. So we didn't touch on that. Honorable Magagula, the issue about the Western Cape was really extensively raised. The need to regularly do the head count, I've agreed with you on that one. The proportion that has been flagged, it's about 6.6, 6,600 educators, as reported by the ELRC, but we need to get that broken down per province. And then, Honorable Low, your statement on the Western Cape, yeah, it's mainly on the Western Cape. Actions taken against 6,110 educators. That's a matter that we'll be reporting back to the committee about, as the chair has directed. Honorable Jordan, what will the department do about the outcome? I've indicated. We've written to provinces and said all the cases that have been flagged, deal with them. Coincidentally, yesterday, HEDCOM received another report of the similar exercise, but complementary to this one, where this exercise was uploaded. And at the forum of the Director Generals, they said, we are the only sector that has been able to approach an exercise of this nature, all 10 departments together. And the DG of National Treasury was presenting, applauding the basic education sector and the ELRC for this work that we have done. And the DG in the presidency said we need to come back to them to come and share the lessons with them. What we are going to do about it is to clean the system, to enhance the currency of our data. Let me give an example. Last year, Mpumalanga had a problem to declare their post baskets. Post basket, the number of teachers that they are going to use for the next academic year. This year, Mpumalanga is leading all other provinces. We had a workshop last week, Thursday and Friday, Mpumalanga reported that they are ready. They are going for consultation much earlier than all other provinces, when last year they were the last ones to finish. That's the value of this exercise. They've got up-to-date data, trusted by employees and the employer, and they are able to move fast to finalize their processes. Honorable Mgadi, financial benefits that are expected in eliminating, yes, is to really help to improve the running of our system, the cost of of paying our employees, or the salary bill, if you like. It's we have to reduce the salary bill because there's a lot of wastage in it. And then, Honorable Maimela, the suggestion about bringing PEDs, I've support 150%. Investigation conducted. Provinces have started doing that and will be reporting to you about the investigations that they've carried out, actions that they've started even meeting out on those who are affected. Yeah, I think, Chair, I've tried to respond. I'm not sure. Mr. Rabutap is also on the platform. He is the acting branch head for teachers. Mr. Rabutap, I don't know whether you'd want to say something quickly, and your team, on anything that I might have not covered. Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Rabutap.
Can we give Mr. Rabutapi, after that, the ELRC chair and also the Mr. Krobler.
Yeah, maybe we can then forge ahead, give the ELRC chair, the secretary, and Mr. Krobler, because Mr. Rabutap doesn't seem to show up. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Ngobeni, I see your hand. You come on follow-ups. Let's get the responses first.
Chair, if I may, I just want to cover a few of the questions that the DG has not responded to because they were directed to the ELRC. I want to start with the last one, whether we had included the independent school, and our response there is no, because we were only limited to public schools, and I think the dynamics of those schools being run as private companies would require a different approach guided by the DG, and then we can take it from there, but we are confirming that they were not part of this exercise. Then in respect of us having budgeted to reimburse the educators who would have used their money to get police clearance certificate, I think the honorable member is confusing the exercise with the vetting that is done not as part of this exercise, because in this case we did not require any police clearance certificates. That is a separate process that is done in terms of that piece of legislation that falls under the Department of Constitutional Development and Justice as a way of protecting the children that are in the education sector. But I'm confirming, Chair, that that was not part of this exercise. I think the DG has made an undertaking that the 8 departments that were part of the project will respond to the remedial action that they've since taken in response of the flagged data sets, and as well as that which we have recommended to be areas of consideration. I'm linking that, Chair, to the question that was asking us whether we have quantified the cost in respect of the unaccounted employees. Obviously, that requires the custodian of the personal information to do that exercise, and we do not have that, because then the payroll data would have to be reconciled if the state believes that they've been paying a salary to somebody who should not have been paid. Chair, I think those are the few. And what was the reaction of Labour parties? Indeed, they were shocked with dismay that there's a province that had opted not to participate, because we would appreciate that they've got members in that province, which is Western Cape in particular. So they were shocked, and regrettable, we had to tell them that the communication was done directly with the office of the DG. And I think they also reduced their query to the office of the DG, who in turn had provided a response to them. Chair, I think those were the questions that were relevant to the ELRC. If I may, through your guidance, hand over to Chris to respond to questions that were technical in nature in respect of the exercise. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Grobler, if there is a questions you picked up that were directly on the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, luckily not many. I did keep some notes here. I think Honourable Magagula had the most technical questions, so I'm just going to start from top to bottom quickly. So the first was the questions about physical verification. How was it ensured? So as I said earlier in the presentation, the platform enforced one sitting completion of headcount and identity verification. So if the user, which was represented, of course, by the principal and the union and SGB representatives, either turned off their machine or moved to a different location, because we also did GPS pinning and GIS intelligence during this entire process, or they tried to close the browser, or they tried to use another device, we would automatically reject and flag their submission. So that was quite an important aspect of implementing the platform, is to ensure that it enforces a one sitting completion. In addition to that, we also audit trailed the IP address of the device, the MAC address of the device, which is basically the unique identity number of any electronic device that has an internet browser. And subsequent to that, we also did daytime logging of when the signatures were signed on the platform. So all of that audit data, as well as the enforcement capability of the platform, then ensured that the headcount and the verification could only be done in one sitting. In terms of how was data protected for tampering, so also in the presentation, I mentioned the immutable nature of data. So the way we handled that is to ensure that every time that a record is committed on the platform and verified and signed and co-authored, it is locked in the database. So which means that no other party had access to the data except myself and our approved head of software engineering, and of course the ELRC. But even saying that, being hosted on Microsoft Azure, we ensured that every single session to the server, would it be for maintenance or updates, is gate kept behind a three-pronged access protocol to ensure that there are three signatures approving access to the server. And we also then audit logged every interaction on the server itself. And then lastly, and I think perhaps the most important one, is that every single phase of the project was kept in its own database, which means that phase 2A cannot override phase 1. So no one could go back and change anything on the data set, either through the front end or from a database access layer, without it alerting the security protocols in place and also then corrupting the audit trail. The next question was, how was poor ID quality documents handled? So again, according to the sessions that we had with the information regulator and all the consultations we had surrounding the protection of personal information and the requirements thereabouts, required us to flag those ID documents that did not conform to our standard. So there's a few ways that we ensure that that is objective and fair. So firstly, our machine learning platform mathematically compared facial dimensions of the photo to the ID document, and then also extracted information off the ID document and did another analysis there. If we found it to be either poor quality or was outside of the Euclidean bounds of symmetry, we would flag that record immediately. And secondly, we also gave the principal and the circuit manager the opportunity to either correct that mistake or flag that mistake if they suspected any wrongdoing. So our mandate wasn't necessarily to investigate, and our mandate wasn't to necessarily ensure that every single item uploaded conforms to the requirement. Our mandate was to look for exceptions and to flag exceptions. And of course, then to tie that to a particular record at a particular school, and then also establish the audit trail for that headcount and verification. So in such a way, we didn't interfere with the process at all. The only thing we did was to ensure that the safety and quality guardrails were in place and that the flagging and exception highlighting guardrails were in place. So to that end, every ID document that didn't conform to either human review quality or machine review quality was flagged for resolution. And that is the data set that the DG and GS is alluding to that was released to the provinces on the 7th of January. So that data set contained a very granular list of every single person that was physically head counted and verified, including the flags and exceptions detected on that particular person's record, up to which school they are at. So the department and the PEDs have the ability to go right down to the particular school and go and look for that particular person. And then the mandate is, and the responsibility for the PED is, to obviously clear that flag and keep a portfolio of evidence as to how exactly they cleared that flag. The last question was, how was foreign nationals handled in terms of ID versus passports? And this also then attaches to a question that Honorable Jordan asked in terms of invisible foreign nationals, more a statement than a question, but I think it's important for us to clarify. So firstly, the platform did support the upload and the verification and the headcount, of course, of people that have passports instead of South African IDs. So, but when it came to the reporting stage and when it came to the data set step that we shared with Treasury and DBE, we clearly divided up the South African ID numbers and the passport numbers in two separate sets. And we did this because we wanted to enable the DBE to easily identify all the employees that were physically verified and head counted that have passports, to then, if they wanted to verify that with another state department, they have a clearly delineated list and data set already. So that is how we handled that. As to the invisible foreign national statements, that's why I'm very circumspect and very careful with the language that I use. And that is why also other honorable members pointed out that I perhaps sidestepped using certain terminologies. I'm very mindful that we can't say ghost workers up until some form of investigation has been followed and that has been confirmed. And I want to do the same with the invisible foreign nationals. What we mean by invisible foreign nationals is that during the head count and physical verification, the individual was head counted and verified using a South African ID. When we, however, did our analysis, our cross-analysis between our data and National Treasury's data, we found that the individual has a different nationality code buried in their entire Purcell record subsystem or collection. And we felt it important to highlight, given the events earlier of this year. So again, I'm very careful and I use invisible in a very circumspect manner. I'm not alluding that there's anything fraudulent going on. What I am saying by using that word is that DBE should verify those, I think it was 47 individuals, to ensure that the proper documentation is in place. And secondly, that the PED's official documentation on Purcell is reflective, concurrent to that of National Treasury. I'm just scanning, Chair, through my notes here to see if there was any other technical questions. I believe that is all the questions that were technical in nature, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grobler. Honorable Ngobeni, you had your hand up earlier. Was it a follow-up?
No, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to state that I don't believe that the questions that I asked were sufficiently responded to. I don't know how to move forward now, whether we should one should write those for written response, because the sense that the questions I asked, there was we are working with Home Affairs, or we are doing it was too glib for my liking. I think I asked specific questions. I even categorized them, and the fact that they weren't responded to is insufficient for me. And so, I'll send them to you, Chair, and whether we convert those into written questions, because I really don't want to go through another hour of these deliberations. We've already been in this meeting for very long, but I absolutely don't appreciate that they were glossed over in the manner that they were. Thanks.
Okay. That's fine, Honorable Ngobeni. Do please send to Mr. Brown and myself. Mr. Brown, let's ensure that we actually write them as written questions, and the department within 7 working days. That is our standing rule. Please do submit them to Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown, please share those responses with all of us. The specific questions that were asked by Honorable Ngobeni were not responded to. So I agree with Honorable Ngobeni that maybe it's because we've been in this committee for the whole day. So of course, it has been a very long day for us, but we really appreciate, we want to thank the department and thank the council, and of course, when we do meet with the provinces, we are going to be inviting organized labor, because DG, as you put it, their actions are actions of patriotism, and I think we should be able to appreciate that organized labor is not only critical of the employer all the time, but they also play a role and even put resources to try and deal with the issues that are within their working space. And I think that's something that we really should appreciate. So we'll communicate with the department on the specific dates that we are going to be having the meeting. My question as well was not responded to at DG. As you say, it's not a big issue, the issue of the Western Cape, not, but there were specific questions in terms of the duty of, like you were saying, the duty of the HOD. And my question was on, in terms of the Schools Act, what are those specific duties? What was the HOD supposed to do? Because when we do meet with the HOD, it's not the first time that they've denied us. Okay, this time around they denied a process, but they have denied us information before, and the HOD will say he was acting on the instruction of the MEC not to give us some information. So seemingly it's a chronic problem in terms of the duties of the HOD and the powers of the HOD in terms of the South African Schools Act. So those questions as well will be submitted in writing so that you can respond to them. But when we do meet with them, with the different PEDs, Mr. Brown, and when we meet with Western Cape, I think we will engage with them. This item, we will add it on top of the item that we are already scheduled to have to discuss with them. In terms of members, we will inform the portfolio committee members on the 2 steps that we committed to undertake, which is to write to the Department of Home Affairs through, of course, we'll also the portfolio committee of Home Affairs on the issues time frame on ensuring that our children are documented. We'll take collectively, we deal with the 3rd term program, because we're going to have to schedule those meetings, and we're going to have to deal with that discussion when we do meet. So thank you very much, Chairperson SG and Mr. Grobler. Thank you for your attention and for spending afternoon with us. We really appreciate to the portfolio committee, applaud you for this excellent work that you have done or on behalf of the employee, and want to thank the DG also for spending this afternoon with us as well to engage on this very important issues. We just hope that we collectively and DM that this work does not go to waste, that indeed to be able to labor look because of your the report we have dealt with this issue and committee. Time we stayed very much, and we are going to see each other or meet each other in the next meeting on Tuesday next week. There was a question posed to me if we are continuing with the meeting of the 26th, because that is our continuing with the meeting. There has been a directive sent or issued to us by the House Chair that portfolio committees can still continue with their meetings on the day of their budget vote. So in the morning, we'll continue with our portfolio committee meeting, and then in the evening, we'll then go to the mini plenary to deal with our budget vote. Thank you very much, everyone, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the chair.
Thank you, Chair. Long live the
Did
chair.
when you say that, I get accused here by
No, long live the chair.
Ukabaze.
Long live the chair. We're not going to be told by
Oh,
Karase.
Kabazela is jealous.
Yeah, long live the chair.
No, everyone has been accusing me
Next
of all
time we
sorts
say
of
long
things.
live to him.
Long
Because
live
of that
Biggie, long
statement.
live. Long live Mkhize, long live.
Okay, thank you.
Long live TG.
Long live Mama Tava.
Madoda hayi kumnandi kule committee. Hayi
Kakubi, kakubi.
hayi kumnandi kabi.